Yeah, well, setting the stage of the mission here for Donald Trump, I want to pick up on something you just heard Dana Bash mentioning. This is the entire mission, making this election about Joe Biden as much as it is about Donald Trump. Donald Trump has failed to do that, Wolf, the entirety of this campaign. He couldn't do it across the 4 nights of his Republican National Convention. We're now 5 weeks away from Election Day. He has to follow the successful re-election models of President Bush in 2004 against John Kerry, of President Obama in 2012 against Mitt Romney. They successfully made what is inherently a referendum, an incumbent going before the American people saying, this is why you should rehire me, into a choice about their opponent versus them. Donald Trump has failed to do that with Joe Biden to date. Tonight is one of the last best chances for him to do so. People are voting. So those are the stakes tonight for the president who enters this as the underdog. You mentioned the poll. One of the things I'm fascinated to see coming out of tonight's debate in our instant poll, Wolf, not only will we learn from debate watchers who they think won the debate, but we're also going to see if opinions on the candidates change from going into the debate, before the debate started, and then did anything change coming out of the debate in terms of their opinion of Joe Biden or Donald Trump. Another thing, Wolf, that we're going to check in with on folks is who they think can better handle the issues. You've gone through all the big 6 topics and the areas that are going to be debated. Well, we'll learn in our instant poll tonight on some of these major issues who the debate watchers think, Trump or Biden, will actually do a better job handling those key issues.
I want to check in on what's happening right now on the stage as we await the start of this first presidential debate. Take a look. You can see what people are talking up there. We're getting ready. We're only a few minutes away from the start of this debate. It's going to be a significant moment.
Let's do this.
The moment, but we called them and they're happy as well.
Did you? This is a cliche. Was it backyard footy? You against the boys? Who ganged up? Who was your teammate? Was Dad on your side against the boys?
I think when I was younger, it was usually me and Dad versus Callum and Tyler. Yep.
How's she go, Dad? What sort of player is she?
Yeah, no, she's pretty good, right? She used to be basketball. She still plays basketball, but she's only really played footy for the last 3 years. In the last 12 months, got really serious about it. And yeah, look, I'm a bit biased, but I think she's a pretty good player. She's a midfield type. She really humps the footy, and she's quite dynamic. So yeah, I think she's not a bad little player.
So what drew you to football, Tony?
Well, I was always a basketball.
Yeah, but enough of that shit.
What are the kind of the key flags you're going to be looking for?
Well, I think the one that's been mentioned around the table, which is how does Biden navigate Trump's antics and his if he says something that's not true, what does he do? If he says something provocative and personal, how does he handle it and still maintain that kind of presidential demeanor and talk to the country about the future that he envisions and the change that he would bring?
Now, Trump is going to be relentlessly asymmetrical. He's going to attack from every angle. And the question is, how does Biden handle that? How does he pivot from these insults and attacks to what he wants to talk about how he would lead the country in the future, and not go down those rabbit holes that David was talking about before and get locked into a you're a liar, you're a liar, you're a liar kind of debate.
Tonight, showman versus statesman. That's what you're going to see. And you're going to have a man of character, and you're going to have somebody doing a bunch of comedic hijinks. I think what Trump is going to try and do is have those little viral moments, get those little jabs in. I think what Biden has to do is to stand there long enough to pull this coalition together and lock it in with his character, with his empathy.
If that happens the way Van described it, Trump won't be the president after this, but I'm not sure that's going to happen. I think Donald Trump will, from the first minute, be on attack and just...
Oh, this cunt's a fucking arsehole.
An attack. I mean, he will...
You ass-licking bastard.
Of Joe Biden just getting...
The Trump ass-licker.
Because I think they
Look
believe...
at the fucking head on it.
They have to make this race about Joe Biden, number one, and they believe he won't be able to stand up under the pressure.
But can't Joe Biden attack back?
He needs a good kick in the fucking ass.
I'm just telling you, if I were the Biden, I'd be prepared for an hour and a half street fight.
Listen, I don't think they want that, but if it becomes a scrum and it's a 90-minute street fight and Biden's still standing at the end of it,
I agree.
then I think that he has done what he needs to do.
And it is one of the things that this president hasn't really been able to define Joe Biden for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, well, I mean, like when you're running a campaign against a challenger, you want to make that challenger as much of an issue as you, and he had, and they have not been able to do that. With Biden, they've tried many different avenues, and they haven't been able to make one stick. And now we're 34 days out. It's getting late to do that. This debate is really crucial. If they're going to open up some wounds here that are going to really mean something, this debate is going to have to produce that.
I think that what I've seen is every time people attack Joe Biden, it backfires. Castro went after Biden and disappeared. Kamala went after Biden and had to get out the race, and luckily she's back in. There's something about Joe Biden. He has some Teflon, and so I just don't think that he's going to get up there. Beat up Joe Biden. Beat up one of the most beloved people in the country. Beat up somebody who's buried half his family. Beat up somebody who cares about you. I don't think this is going to go the way that they think it's going to go. If they do what you just said, I think that may actually help Biden more in person.
You know the old Reagan line, there you go again? And you can, Joe Biden can use that against Donald Trump. If he continues to attack him, Joe Biden can smile at him and say, okay, that's a lie, and go on. I mean, I am sure, actually, that they have responses ready-made for him to just flick something back at the president and then turn and take it back.
The bottom line is, Republicans believe that Joe Biden has lost more than just a step, and they believe that an hour and a half of a smackdown will become evident. That's what I think.
All I say about that is that that's a gamble that they're willing to take.
You also need more than Republicans.
That's the gamble I think they're in a position that they have to take. Right?
You need more than Republicans. You have to persuade others. And the fact is, if you look at this polling and you ask who has the mental acuity to be president, they're pretty even in this regard. So they've got a lot of ground to make up here.
If you're playing at the base, and that's your argument, fine, but not voters that you might need to persuade.
I think you do have people who are in the Democratic coalition right now who they want to vote because they want to vote against Donald Trump, but they also need some reassurance tonight. It's not just Republicans who need that reassurance. I think there's some Democrats who need that reassurance too, that he's tough enough, that he's strong enough. But I think that he's going to be up to it. If you remember when he was in that big old mix of all the other Democrats who kind of looking lost and cut himself off, once it got down to just him and Bernie, he was able to hang. And I don't think it's just because Bernie didn't go after him personally. I think it's because I think Joe has a lot to say and wants to say it and will say it tonight.
I mean, don't forget, one thing I was thinking of is looking back at the debates in 2016. The old Trump thing, what have I got to lose? 2016, not as much as he has to lose now. He has a lot to lose now, and he's going to be tough.
How do you see the debate starting just in terms of topics? I mean, what's the first question from
Isn't it hard?
Is it taxes?
Isn't it hard for the tax thing not to be?
I think Chris
As a occasional moderator, there's a couple different ways to go about it. Taxes would be the obvious one.
Yeah, I think the courts also those are the two most recent news, would be the court nomination and taxes. You would probably lead with what's
But sometimes if something's so obvious on the taxes, for instance, you might go COVID with, there's the Trump family.
It becomes a Trump gang.
The only reason I think Wallace doesn't lead with the tax because it's clearly leading with just an antagonistic topic,
Right.
and I think coming out of the box that just may look. I just think we'll look badly. I think we'll make Chris look like he's taking sides.
Also, you can make the argument as a moderator, he doesn't need to do one necessarily introducing it first because Joe Biden's going to mention it no matter
Take
what.
something that's a lot more neutral as a starter. That way, you're not setting the table, picking one side's
Which would be
weak
what?
point as opposed to something
On
else.
your point, Rick, about whether Biden can execute on what Gloria suggests, which is to hit and pivot, we're going to know very quickly, I think, because of what you said, because the president is going to be attacking him from the start, and we'll know if he has a strategy to deal with that. I think we'll get a sense early in this debate.
And here's the point again. Hour and a half, no breaks, nobody to talk to, not getting any feedback. Whether that strategy is actually working. Because he may stick to that strategy, whether it's
Fuck
working or
idiot.
not, because that's what he was trained to do, or he may be sticking to it, and the fact that Trump keeps hammering me thinks, well, it's not working, I better change.
But he
All
wasn't
those types of
working.
dynamics, again, unless you're out there in that stage and you have to live that, you have no idea what's going on.
Also, in debates, if you look at the ones with Clinton, and Donald Trump is almost sort of doing a jazz performance. I mean, he's like riffing on what's happening.
Yeah,
from
he
the
keeps
whole
commenting.
Right,
Yeah,
he's
he's
commenting.
commenting.
He's
It's
actually
annoying.
enjoying it,
It's annoying.
whereas the other person is clearly not enjoying the experience. And I wonder if
But the point is, it's debilitating, and that's the point I keep making. It's over time, an hour and a half. It wears you down.
That's why, and one thing that we haven't talked about is that the families are both there. And these are two these are two men who love their families. They're very, very, committed to family stuff. And so I'm very curious to see what's going to happen. Listen, I'm going to tell you, listen, Trump is proud to be a Trump. Biden is proud to be a Biden. When the family issues hit, and I think they will hit, I think there will be questions raised about Hunter. I think we're going to see how does he handle that. And also, some of this family stuff is now fair game because of this tax stuff. So you might be in a situation now where you have two dads
So they're not wearing masks?
themselves trying to navigate in public life that kind of a family feud, which is now a part of national life.
I think that we maybe we're talking about Biden getting hit and then pivoting, but I think Biden's going to hit back a little bit too. I do. If it's, I don't know if it's on family per se, Van, but I do think that there are going to be issues that Biden's just going to go right back at him.
We are just minutes away. Let's go back to Jake.
Well, it's obviously a huge night, and we're just minutes away from it. Dana, closing thoughts as we prepare for this big moment?
That this is really one of the most important moments that we've seen in politics, certainly since we've all been covering it, definitely for me, because of the reason that we were talking about. We are in a pandemic, and people haven't really been able to see these candidates in the traditional ways that we usually see candidates, especially at this late stage of the game. And this is a high-stakes moment no matter what year, but especially right now.
There's First Lady Melania Trump walking in with a mask, not often seen at events where her husband is featured, but all of her family walked in with masks. Abby?
Yeah, I mean, you can't forget the fact that we are in a country in crisis, and I think the American people are looking for some version of strength, and they're going to see two different kinds here tonight. One man, President Trump, who leads from his gut, and another man, Joe Biden, who says to the American public, I'm leading with the help of experts and my own experience in government. Those are two very stark choices, and I think it's going to be really on display. But to the extent that these two men have strengths and weaknesses, watching them and covering them over the years, I think this is going to be a pretty well-matched fight, and it's going to be a slugfest.
Except they're very different styles, right? One guy conveys empathy, the other guy conveys, you can call it toughness, you can call it nastiness. I remember in 2012 when Obama had his first debate after 4 years being president, he had been in a bubble, only talking to the people who really liked him and supported him. He hadn't done a lot of interviews that year, and he was rusty and out of shape. And talk about a bubble. I mean, people talk about the liberal bubble, the MAGA bubble that Donald Trump is in, where he talks to, Judge Jeanine and Fox folks, although I guess he does have a Fox moderator. I wonder what effect that will have.
It could. I mean, and it's not just President Obama. George W. Bush didn't do well in his first debate. This is kind of the problem that incumbent presidents have, which is why this president, despite the fact that they have been trying to lower expectations, saying he hasn't really practiced, he has practiced. He has gotten the you-know-what kicked out of him by his aides and advisors in debate prep, because they know that he has been in a bubble because he's president of the United States.
It's not just that he's president of the United States, though. It's secludes himself with these sycophantic reporters.
It's also because there are some things that this president doesn't want to talk about, as Caitlin Collins reported tonight. He doesn't like to talk about his money. Will he be prepared to talk about things that are getting under his skin in that way? And did he do enough preparation for those things? I do think, though, to concede to the president in some ways, he does take tough questions from the media all the time. He doesn't always answer
From the White House press corps.
From the White House press corps.
I mean, in interviews, in long interviews.
Not in interviews, but from the White House press corps.
Absolutely.
I think that matters.
No, it does matter, and that is something that he does that Obama did not. Yeah. But I guess the point is he's in a reward system where the most MAGA-friendly stuff gets applauded. Wolf?
You know, the moment that this campaign has been building to for months, President Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden taking the stage, going head-to-head in their first presidential debate at this crucial time in America's history. The pandemic, the economy, race in America, the Supreme Court. They will be asked about the very difficult issues Americans are facing right now, the first of 3 presidential debates about to begin.
Good evening from the Health Education campus of Case Western Reserve University and the Cleveland Clinic. I'm Chris Wallace of Fox News, and I welcome you to the first of the 2020 presidential debates between President Donald J. Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden. This debate is sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates. The Commission has designed the format, 6 roughly 15-minute segments with 2-minute answers from each candidate to the first question, then open discussion for the rest of each segment. Both campaigns have agreed to these rules. For the record, I decided the topics and the questions in each topic. I can assure you, none of the questions has been shared with the Commission or the 2 candidates. This debate is being conducted under health and safety protocols designed by the Cleveland Clinic, which is serving as the health security advisor to the Commission for all 4 debates. As a precaution, both campaigns have agreed that candidates will not shake hands at the beginning of tonight's debate. The audience here in the hall has promised to remain silent. No cheers, no boos or other interruptions, so we, and more importantly you, can focus on what the candidates have to say. No noise except right now, as we welcome the Republican nominee, President Trump, and the Democratic nominee, Vice President Biden. Gentlemen, a lot of people have been waiting for this night, so let's get going. Our first subject is the Supreme Court. President Trump, you nominated Amy Coney Barrett over the weekend to succeed the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the court. You say the Constitution is clear about your obligation and the Senate's to consider a nominee to the court. Vice President Biden, you say that this is an effort by the President and Republicans to jam through at an appointment and what you call an abuse of power. My first question to both of you tonight, why are you right in the argument you make and your opponent wrong, and where do you think a Justice Barrett would take the court? President Trump, in this first segment, you go first, 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chris. I will tell you very simply, we won the election. Elections have consequences. We have the Senate, we have the White House, and we have a phenomenal nominee, respected by all, top academic, good in every way, In fact, some of her biggest endorsers are very liberal people from Notre Dame and other places. So I think she's going to be fantastic. We have plenty of time, even if we did it after the election itself. I have a lot of time after the election, as you know.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that she will be outstanding. She's going to be as good as anybody that has served on that court. We really feel that. We have a professor at Notre Dame, highly respected by all, said she's the single greatest student he's ever had. He's been a professor for a long time at a great school. And we won the election, and therefore we have the right to choose her. And very few people knowingly would say otherwise. And by the way, the Democrats, they wouldn't even think about not doing it. If they had, the only difference is they try and do it faster. There's no way they would give it up. They had Merrick Garland, but the problem is they didn't have the election, so they were stopped. And probably that would happen in reverse also. Definitely would happen in reverse. So we won the election, and we have the right to do it, Chris.
President Trump, thank you. Same question to you, Vice President Biden. You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, thank you for doing this. Looking forward to this, Mr. President. The American people have a right to have a say who the Supreme Court nominee is. And that say occurs when they vote for a United States senators and when they vote for the President of the United States. They're not going to get that chance now because we're in the middle of an election already. The election has already started. Tens of thousands of people have already voted. And so the thing that should happen is we should wait. We should wait and see what the outcome of this election is. Because that's the only way the American people get to express their view is by who they elect as president and who they elect as vice president. Now, what's at stake here is the president's made it clear he wants to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. He's been running on that, he ran on that, and he's been governing on that. He's in the Supreme Court right now trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, which will strip 20 million people from having insurance, health insurance now, if it goes into court. And the justice, and I have nothing, I'm not opposed to the justice, she seems like a very fine person. But she's written before she went on the bench, which is her right, that she thinks that the Affordable Care Act is not constitutional. The other thing is on the court, and if it's struck down, what happens? Women's rights are fundamentally changed. Once again, a woman could be held to pay more money because she has a pre-existing condition of pregnancy. They're able to charge a woman more for the same exact procedure a man gets. And that ended when we, in fact, passed the Affordable Care Act. And there's 100 million people who have pre-existing conditions, and they'll be taken away as well. Those pre-existing conditions, the insurance companies are going to love this. And so it's just not appropriate to do this before this election. If he wins the election and the Senate is Democrat or Republican, then he goes forward. If not, we should wait until February.
There aren't 100 million people with pre-existing conditions. As far as the say is concerned, the people already had their say. Justice Ginsburg said very powerfully, very strongly, at some point, 10 years ago or so, she said a president and the Senate is elected for a period of time, but a president's elected for 4 years. We're not elected for 3 years. I'm not elected for 3 years. So we have the Senate, we have a president.
He's elected to the next
During that period of time, we have an opening. I'm not elected for 3 years. I'm elected for 4 years. And the 100 million people, Joe, the 100 million people is totally wrong. I don't know where you got that number. The bigger problem that you have is that you're going to extinguish 180 million people with their private health care, that they're very
That's
happy.
simply not true.
Well, you said we're going to socialist. We're going to socialist.
We're now into, gentlemen, we're now into open
Shut up,
discussion.
Trump.
Open discussion. Yes, I agree. Go ahead, Vice President.
Number one, he knows that what I proposed. What I proposed is that we expand Obamacare and we increase it. We do not wipe any, and one of the big debates we had with 23 of my colleagues trying to win the nomination that I won, were saying that Biden wanted to allow people to have private insurance still. They can. They do. They will under my proposal.
Not what you said, and it's not what you
Shut up!
That is simply
Your party doesn't say it. Your party wants to go socialist.
What a fucking asshole!
And socialist
right
healthcare.
now. I am.
And
the
they're going to
Democratic
dominate
Party.
you, Joe. You know that.
I am the Democratic Party right now. The platform of the Democratic Party is what I, in fact, approved of. What I approved of. Now here's the deal. The deal is that it's going to wipe out pre-existing conditions. And by the way, the 200,000 people that have died on his watch, how many of those have survived? Well, there's 7 million people that contracted COVID. What does it mean for them going forward if you strike down the Affordable Care Act?
Joe, you've had 308,000 military people dying because you couldn't provide them proper health care in the military. So don't tell me.
I'm happy to talk about
Change the subject.
Here, it would be 200, it would be 2 million people because you were very late on the draw. You didn't want me to ban China, which was heavily infected. You didn't want me to ban...
Shut up!
Gentlemen,
Which was heavily
Mr. President,
infected. You would have been much later, Joe.
Mr.
Much later.
President, Mr.
You're
President,
talking about 2 million people.
Mr. President, as a moderator, we're going to talk about COVID in the next segment, but go ahead.
Let me finish. The point is that the president also is opposed to Roe v. Wade. That's on the ballot as well in the court. And so that's also at stake right now. And so the election is all.
You don't know it's on the ballot. Why is it on the ballot?
Because
Why is it on the ballot? It's not on the ballot.
It's on the ballot in the
I
court.
don't think so.
In the court. Well,
There's nothing happening there.
Donald, we
And you don't know her view on Roe v. Wade.
I
You don't know
don't
her
know.
view.
Well, all right. Let's talk. We got
What a fucking cunt of a bastard.
Out of time, so.
I want some bastard to shoot him.
Healthcare, and then we'll come back to Roe v. Wade.
All right.
Mr. President.
What a bloody slime ball.
We'll hear a case a week after the election in which the Trump administration, along with 18 state attorneys general, are seeking to overturn
That's right.
Obamacare, to end Obamacare. You have spent the last...
Because they want to give good health care.
If I may ask my question, sir.
Good health care.
Over the last 4 years, you have promised to repeal and replace Obamacare, but you have never in these 4 years come up with a plan, a comprehensive plan to replace Obamacare.
Of course I have.
Well,
I got rid of the individual mandate. Excuse me, I got rid of the individual mandate, which was a big chunk of
comprehensive plan.
That is absolutely a big thing. That was the worst part of Obamacare.
Sir,
Chris, that was the worst part of
let me
Obamacare.
ask my question.
Well, I'll ask Joe. The individual mandate was the most unpopular aspect of Obamacare. I got rid of it.
I'd like
And
to,
we will protect people.
President, I'm the moderator of this debate, and I would like you to let me ask my question, and then you can answer.
Go ahead.
You, in the course of these 4 years, have never come up with a comprehensive plan to replace Obamacare, and just this last Thursday, you signed a largely symbolic executive order to protect people with pre-existing conditions 5 days before this debate. So my question, sir, is what is the Trump healthcare plan?
Well, first of all, I guess I'm debating you, not him, but that's okay. I'm not surprised. Let me just tell you something. There's nothing symbolic. I'm cutting drug prices. I'm going with favored nations, which no president has the courage to do because you're going against big pharma. Drug prices will be coming down 80 or 90%. You could have done it during your 47-year period in government, but you didn't do it. Nobody's done it. So we're cutting health care. All of the things that we've done, insulin, I give you an example, insulin. It was destroying families, destroying people because I'm getting it for so cheap. It's like water, you want to know the truth, so cheap. Take a look at all of the drugs that what we're doing, prescription drug prices. We're going to allow our governors now to go to other countries to buy drugs because they pay just a tiny fraction.
This is open discussion.
No, but this is big stuff.
Sir, you'll be happy. I'm about to pick up on one of your points to ask the vice president, which is he points out that you would like to add a public option to Obamacare, and the argument that he makes and other Republicans make is that that is going to end private insurance.
It is
and
not.
will. I'm sorry, asking the question. It will end.
Party says, by the way.
It will end private insurance and create a government takeover of health care.
It does not. It's only for those people who are so poor they qualify for Medicaid. They can get that free in most states, except governors who want to deny people who are poor Medicaid. Anyone who qualifies for Medicare would, Medicaid would automatically be enrolled in the public option. The vast majority of the American people would still not be in that option. Number one.
So you agree with Bernie Sanders on the manifesto? That gives you socialized medicine.
Look, hey,
Are you saying
I'm not going to listen to him. The fact of the matter is, I beat Bernie Sanders.
Not by much.
I've beat him a whole hell of a lot. I'm here standing facing you.
Pocahontas would have left 2 days early. You would have lost every primary.
All he knows how to do is
Super Tuesday. You got very lucky.
Here's the deal. I got very lucky, and we get very lucky tonight as well. And tonight I'm going to make sure, because here's the deal. Here's the deal. The fact is that everything he's saying so far is simply a lie. I'm not here to call out his lies. Everybody knows he's a liar.
But you
I just want to make sure. I want to make sure.
Graduated last in your class in the first year.
I want to make
Mr.
sure.
President, can you let him finish, sir?
He doesn't know how to do that. He has, you pick
Be surprised.
the wrong guy, the wrong night at the wrong time.
Listen, you agreed with
Here's the
Bernie
deal.
Sanders on the
The
manifesto.
whole idea, there is no manifesto, number
Please let him
one.
speak, Mr.
Number two,
You just lost the left.
number two,
You just lost the left. You agreed with Bernie Sanders on a plan that's absolutely
folks, do you have any idea what this plan's
socialized, they
doing?
call it
Mr.
Do you have any idea?
socialized medicine.
Mr.
I'll
President.
tell you what, he is not for any help for people needing health care. Because because he in fact already has cost 10 million people their health care that they had from their employers because of his recession. Number one. Number two, there are 20 million people getting health care through Obamacare now that he wants to take it away. He won't ever look you in the eye and say that's what he wants to do. Take it away.
I want to give you better health care at a much lower price because
he doesn't know how. He doesn't know how to do that.
Fixed it.
He has never offered a
fixed
plan.
it to an extent.
He has never done a
as
single
you might
thing.
know, but probably does.
Gentlemen, you realize if you're both speaking at the same time,
And it's so expensive.
let the president, go ahead, sir.
Obamacare is no good. We made it better, and I had a choice to make very early on. We took away the individual mandate. We guaranteed pre-existing conditions, but took away the individual mandate. Listen, this is the way it is. And that destroyed, they shouldn't even call it Obamacare. Then I had a choice to make. Do I let my people run it really well or badly? If I run it badly, they'll probably blame him, but they'll blame me. But more importantly, I want to help people, okay? I said, you got to run it so well. And I just had a meeting with them. They said, the problem is no matter how well you run Obamacare, it's a disaster. It's too expensive, premiums are too high, and it doesn't work. So we do want to get rid of it.
I understand this, sir, but I have to give you roughly equal time. Please let the vice president talk.
Good.
He has no plan for health care.
Please.
He sends out wishful thinking. He has executive orders that have no power. He hasn't lowered drug costs for anybody. He's been promising a health care plan since he got elected. He has none, like almost everything else he talks about. He does not have a plan. He doesn't have a plan. And the fact is, this man doesn't know what he's talking about.
All right, I have one final question for you,
Sure.
Mr. Vice President. If Senate Republicans, we were talking originally about the Supreme Court here, if Senate Republicans go ahead and confirm Justice Barrett, there has been talk about ending the filibuster or even packing the court, adding to the 9 justices there. You call this a distraction by the president, but in fact it wasn't brought up by the president. It was brought up by some of your Democratic colleagues in the Congress. So my question to you is, you have refused in the past to talk about it. Are you willing to tell the American people tonight whether or not you will support either ending the filibuster or packing the court?
Whatever position I take on that, that'll become the issue. The issue is the American people should speak. You should go out and vote. You're in voting now. Vote and let your senators know how strongly you feel. Vote now. Make sure you, in fact, let people know your senators. I'm not going to answer the question.
Why would you answer that
because
question?
the question is,
radical left.
Will you shut up, man?
Who is on your list, Joe? Who's on your list?
Gentlemen, I think
This is
we've
so
ended this.
Unprecedented court. I'm not going to give a
We
list.
have ended this segment. We're going to move on to the second segment.
That was really a productive segment, wasn't it? Keep yapping, man.
The people understand, Jeff.
They
47 years, you've done nothing. They understand.
All right. The second subject is COVID-19, which is an awfully serious subject, so let's try to be serious about it. We have had more than 7 million cases of coronavirus in the United States, and more than 200,000 people have died. Even after we produce a vaccine, experts say that it could be months or even years before we come back to anything approaching normal. My question for both of you is, based on what you have said and done so far, and what you have said you would do starting in 2021, why should the American people trust you more than your opponent to deal with this public health crisis going forward? In this case, the question goes to you first, sir. 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Good luck. 200,000 dead. As you said, over 7 million infected in the United States. We, in fact, have 5% or 4% of the world's population, 20% of the deaths. 40,000 people a day are contracting COVID. In addition to that, about between 750 and 1,000 people a day are dying. When he was presented with that number, he said, it is what it is. Well, it is what it is because you are who you are. That's why it is. The president has no plan. He hasn't laid out anything. He knew all the way back in February how serious this crisis was. He knew it was a deadly disease. What did he do? He's on tape as acknowledging he knew it. He said he didn't tell us or give people a warning of it because he didn't want to panic the American people. You don't panic. He panicked. In addition to that, what did he do? He went in and we were insisting that the Chinese, the people we had on the ground in China should be able to go to Wuhan and determine for themselves how dangerous this was. He did not even ask Xi to do that. He told us what a great job Xi was doing. He said we owe him a debt of gratitude for being so transparent with us. And what did he do then? He then did nothing. He waited and waited and waited. He still doesn't have a plan. I laid out back in March exactly what we should be doing. And I laid out again in July what we should be doing. We should be providing all the protective gear possible. We should be providing the money the House has passed in order to be able to go out and get people the help they need to keep their businesses open schools. It costs a lot of money. You should get out of your bunker and get out of the sand trap and get in your golf course and go in the Oval Office and bring together the Democrats and Republicans and fund what needs to be done now to save lives.
So if we would have listened to you,
You have 2 minutes, sir.
if we would have listened to you, the country would have been left wide open. Millions of people would have died, not 200,000, and one person is too much. It's China's fault. It should have never happened. They stopped it from going in, but it was China's fault. And by the way, when you talk about numbers, you don't know how many people died in China. You don't know how many people died in Russia. You don't know how many people died in India. They don't exactly give you a straight count, just so you understand. But if you look at what we've done, I closed it, and you said he's xenophobic. He's a racist, and he's xenophobic. Because you didn't think I should have closed our country. Wait a minute.
It says 2 minutes.
You didn't think we should have closed our country because you thought it was terrible. You wouldn't have closed it for another 2 months. By my doing it early, in fact, Dr. Fauci said, President Trump saved thousands of lives. Many of you Democrat governors said, President Trump did a phenomenal job. We worked with the governor. Oh, really? Go take a look. The governor said I did a phenomenal job. Most of them said that. In fact, people that would not be necessarily on my side said that. President Trump did a phenomenal job. We did. We got the gowns. We got the masks. We made the ventilators. You wouldn't have made ventilators. And now we're weeks away from a vaccine. We're doing therapeutics already. Fewer people are dying when they get sick. Far fewer people are dying. We've done a great job. The only thing I haven't done a good job, and that's because of the fake news. No matter what you say to them, they give you bad press on it. It's just fake news. They give you good press, they give me bad press, because that's the way it is, unfortunately. But let me just tell you something. I don't care. I've gotten used to it. But I'll tell you, Joe, you could never have done the job that we did. You don't have it in your blood. You could have never done that job.
I know how to do the job. I know how to get the job
Well, you didn't do very well in swine flu. H1N1, you were a disaster. Your own chief of staff said it was a disaster.
14,000 people died, not 200,000. There was
A
no
very-
economic recession.
Sir, you made a
There was
far less
no
weak
recession.
You made a point, but I'm answering.
And there was we didn't shut down the economy. This is his economy he's shut down. The reason it's shut down is because, look, you folks at home, how many of you got up this morning and had an empty chair at the kitchen table because someone died of COVID? How many of you were in a situation where you lost your mom or dad and you couldn't even speak to them? You had a nurse holding a phone up so you could, in fact, say goodbye.
You would have lost far more people.
Oh, shut up, asshole!
And you would have been
And by the way,
months late.
his own CDC director says we could lose as many as another 200,000 people between now and the end of the year. And he held up, he said, if we just wear a mask, we can save half those numbers. Just a mask. And by the way, in terms of the whole notion of a vaccine, we're for a vaccine, but I don't trust him at all, nor do you. I know you don't. What we trust is a scientist.
You don't
we
trust
Dr.
Johnson,
Fauci.
Johnson, Pfizer.
And by the way,
Gentlemen, let me move on to questions about the future, because you both have touched on two of the questions I'm going to ask. Focusing on the future first, President Trump, you have repeatedly either contradicted or been at odds with some of your government's own top scientists. The week before last, the head of the Centers for Disease Control, Dr. Redfield, said it would be summer before the vaccine would become generally available to the public. You said that he was confused and mistaken. Those were your two words.
Yeah.
But Dr. Slaoui, the head of your Operation Warp Speed, has said exactly the same thing. Are they both wrong?
Well, I've spoken to the companies and we can have it a lot sooner. It's a very political thing because people like this would rather make it political than save lives. It is a very political thing. I've spoken to Pfizer, I've spoken to all of the people that you have to speak to. We have great Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and others. They can go faster than that by a lot. Become very political because the left, or I don't know if I call
So
it
you're
left, I don't
suggesting
know what I
that
call
the
it.
head of your Operation Warp Speed, Dr. Scott?
I disagree with him. Yeah, no, I disagree with both of them. And he didn't say that. He said it could be there, but it could also be much sooner. I had him in my office 2 days ago.
He talked about the summer, sir, before it's generally available. Just
He
like
said it's a possibility that we'll have the answer before November 1st. It could also be after
It's
that.
generally available. not
Well, we're going to deliver it right away. We have the military all set up logistically. They're all set up. We have our military that delivers soldiers, and they can do 200,000 a day. They're going to be
This is the same man.
It's
who
all
told
set
you
up.
By Easter, this would be gone away. By the warm weather, it'd be gone. Miraculous, like a miracle. And by the way, maybe you could inject some bleach in your arm, and that would take care of it. This is the
That was
same man.
said sarcastic.
That was
you know that.
I
would have said
And
sarcastic.
so here's the deal. This man is talking about a vaccine. Every serious company is talking about maybe having a vaccine done by the end of the year. But the distribution of that vaccine will not occur until sometime beginning or the middle of next year to get it out, if we get the vaccine. And pray God we will. Pray God we will.
Mr. Vice President, I want to pick up
We'll have
on
the
that.
vaccine soon.
I want to pick up on this question, though. You say the public can trust the scientists, but they can't trust President Trump. In fact, you said that again tonight. Your running mate, Senator Harris, goes further, saying the public health experts, quote, will be muzzled, will be suppressed. Given the fact that polls already show that people are concerned about the vaccine and are reluctant to take it, are you and your running mate, Senator Harris, contributing to that fear?
No more than the question you just asked him. You pointed out. He puts pressure and disagrees with his own scientists.
But you're saying you can't,
Everybody knows.
Senator Harris is saying you can't trust the scientists.
No, you can't trust the scientists. She didn't say that. You can't trust
She said the public health
They said
experts,
that.
quote, will be muzzled, will be
Yes,
suppressed.
well, that's what he's going to try to do, but there's millions of scientists, there's thousands of scientists out there, like here at this great hospital, that don't work for him. Their job doesn't depend on him. That's not, they're the people, and by
I
the way.
spoke to the scientists that are in charge.
By the way,
They will have the vaccine very soon.
But you believe for a moment what he's telling you in light of all the lies he's told you about the whole issue relating to COVID. He still hasn't even acknowledged that he knew this was happening, knew how dangerous it was going to be back in February, and he didn't even tell you. He's on record as saying it. He panicked or he just looked at the stock market. One of the two, because guess what? A lot of people die. And a lot more are going to die unless he gets a lot smarter, a lot quicker.
Mr. President?
Did you use the word smart? So you said you went to Delaware State, but you forgot the name of your college. You didn't go to Delaware State. You graduated.
Change the subject.
The lowest in your class. Don't ever use
What
the
a
word
fucking
smart.
asshole!
Don't ever use that word.
Oh, give me a break.
Because you know what? There's nothing smart about you, Joe. 47 years you've done nothing.
Let's have this debate.
And if you would have had, let me just tell you something, Joe.
No,
If you would have had the charge of what I was put through, I had to close the greatest economy in the history of our country. And by the way, now it's being built again.
See,
And
We're
it's
going
going up
into the
fast.
economy in the next segment, sir.
Okay.
It's going up fast.
Okay,
Look forward to it.
when it comes to how the virus has been handled so far, the two of you have taken very different approaches, and this is going to affect how the virus is handled going forward by whichever of you ends up becoming the next president. I want to quickly go through several of those. Reopenings. Vice President Biden, you have been much more reluctant than President Trump about reopening the economy and schools. Why, sir?
Because he doesn't have a plan. If I were running, I know what the plan is. You've got to provide these businesses the ability to have the money to be able to reopen with the PPE as well as with the sanitation they need. You have to
Tell
provide
that to
them
Nancy
plastic.
Pelosi.
Oh.
Well, he's just shush for a minute.
Tell it to
See,
Nancy
so-
Pelosi. And
And
Schumer,
by the
Brian
way,
Chuck.
Nancy Pelosi and Schumer, they have a plan. He won't even meet with them. The Republicans won't meet with the Senate. And he sits at his golf course and, well, I mean, literally, think about it.
You probably
All right,
play
think
more
about
than I do, Joe.
What about this question of reopenings and the fact?
Well, he wants to shut down this country.
Oh.
And I want to keep it open. And we did a great thing by shutting it
Shut
down.
it down.
Wait a minute, Joe. Let me shut you down for a second, Joe, just for 1 second. We want to He wants to shut down the country. We just went through it. We had to because we didn't know anything about the disease. Now we found that elderly people with heart problems and diabetes and different problems are very, very vulnerable. We learned a lot. Young children aren't. Even younger people aren't. We've learned a lot. But he wants to shut it down.
You lying
More
bastard.
people will be hurt by continuing. If you look at Pennsylvania, if you look at certain states,
They're gonna tear you to pieces
shut down,
after
they have
this.
Democrat governors all. One of the reasons they
You
shut
want to
down
see what they
is
come
they
up
want to
with.
keep it shut down until after the election.
Oh, yeah.
November 3rd. Because it's a political. Those states are not doing well that are shut down right now.
Respond to that. President Trump, you have begun to increasingly question the effectiveness of masks as a disease preventer. And in fact, recently you have cited the issue of waiters touching their masks and touching plates. Are you questioning
No, I
the
think masks are
efficacy of
okay. You have to
masks?
understand, if you look, I mean, I have a mask right here. I put a mask on it, you know, when I think I need it. Tonight, as an example, everybody's had a test and you've had social distancing and all of the things that you have to, but I wear masks when needed.
Come on, Joe, get into him.
Let me ask.
I don't wear masks like him. Every time you see him, he's got a mask. He could be speaking 200 feet away from it. He shows up with the biggest mask I've ever seen. I will say
Vice President Biden, go ahead, sir.
Look, the way to open businesses is give them the wherewithal to be able to open. We provided money that
But I was asking you, sir, about masks.
Well, masks make a big difference. His own head of CDC said if we just wore masks between now, if everybody wore masks and social distance between now and January, we'd probably save up to 100,000 lives. It matters.
And they've also said the opposite. They've
Oh,
also said
no serious person said the opposite.
Well,
serious.
Dr. Fauci said the opposite.
I want to ask you, we
He
got
said very
a
strongly,
minute left in this
masks
segment.
are not good. Then he changed his mind. He said, masks, I'm okay with masks.
I
I'm
want to
not
ask you
fighting
both about
masks.
one last subject, because your different approaches has even affected the way that you have campaigned. President Trump, you're holding large rallies with crowds packed together, thousands of people.
Outside.
Outside, yes, sir, agreed. Vice President Biden, you are holding much smaller events with
nobody will show up.
People with.
Oh, you fucking
Nobody
scumbag.
shows up to his
Yeah?
In any case,
Do you reckon he needs a good kick in the ass?
Why you not? You go first, sir.
Because people want to hear what I have to say. I mean,
But are you
you've
not
done a
worried
great
about
job as a
spreading disease?
president, and I'll have 25, 35,000 people show up at airports. We use airports.
Are you not worried about
We
the
have a
disease
lot of
issue,
people.
sir?
Well, so far, we have had no problem whatsoever. It's outside, that's a big difference according to the experts. And we do them outside. We have tremendous crowds, as you see. I mean, and literally at 24 hours notice. And Joe does the circles and has 3 people someplace.
Okay.
By the way, did you see one of the last big rallies he had? And a reporter came up to him to ask him a question. He said, no, stand back. Put on your mask. Put on a mask. Have you been tested? I'm way far away from those other people. And that's what he said. I'm going to be okay. He's not worried about you. He's not worried about the people out there breathing in one another.
We've had no negative effect.
No negative effect.
We've had no negative effect. And we've had 35, 40,000
Right.
people
You wanna-
at these rallies.
Just quickly finish up, because I want to move on to our next.
Yes, I would. He's been totally irresponsible the way in which he has handled the social distancing and people wearing masks, basically encouraged them not to.
All right.
And he's a fool on this.
If you could get the crowds, you would have done the same thing. But you can't. Nobody cares.
Gentlemen, can we move on to the
Nobody cares.
Gentlemen, can we move on to the economy?
Yes.
The economy is, I think it's fair to say, recovering faster than expected from the shutdown. In the second quarter, the unemployment rate fell to 8.4% last month. The Federal Reserve says the hit to growth, which is going to be there, is not going to be nearly as big as they had expected. President Trump, you say we are in a V-shaped recovery. Vice President Biden, you say it's more of a K-shape. What difference does that mean to the American people in terms of the economy? President Trump, in this segment, you go first.
So we built the greatest economy in history. We closed it down because of the China plague. When the plague came in, we closed it down, which was very hard psychologically to do. He didn't think we should close it down, and he was wrong. And again, 2 million people would be dead now instead of still 204,000 people is too much. 1 person is too much. Should have never happened from China. But what happened is we closed it down, and now we're reopening, and we're doing record business. We had 10.4 million people in a 4-month period that we've put back into the workforce. That's a record the likes of which nobody's ever seen before. And he wants to close down he will shut it down again. He will destroy this country. You know, a lot of people, between drugs and alcohol and depression, when you start shutting it down, you take a look at what's happening in some of your Democrat-run states where they have these tough shutdowns. And I'm telling you, it's because they don't want to open it. One of them came out last week, you saw that. Oh, we're going to open up on November 9th. Why November 9th? Because it's after the election. They think they're hurting us by keeping them closed. They're hurting people. People know what to do. They can social distance, they can wash their hands, they can wear masks, they can do whatever they want. But they got to open these states up. When you look at North Carolina, when you look, and these governors are under siege, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and a couple of others, you got to open these states up. It's not fair. You're talking about almost it's like being in prison. And you look at what's going on with divorce, look at what's going on with alcoholism and drugs. It's a very, very sad thing. And he'll close down the whole country. This guy will close down the whole country and destroy our country.
Shut up.
Our country is coming back incredibly well, setting records as it does it. We don't need somebody to come in and say, let's shut it down.
All right, your 2 minutes, sir. We're now moved to you. As I said, posing the question, the president says it's a V-shaped recovery. You say it's a K-shaped recovery. What's the difference?
The difference is millionaires and billionaires like him in the middle of the COVID crisis have done very well. Billionaires have made another $300 billion because of his profligate tax proposal, and he only focused on the market. But you folks at home, you folks living in Scranton and Claymont and all the small towns and working class towns in America, how well are you doing? This guy paid a total of $750 in taxes.
Sir, sir, it's just, I understand. You've agreed to the 2 minutes, so please let him have it.
Do I get my time back? The fact is that he has, in fact, worked on this in a way that he's going to be the first president of the United States to leave office having fewer jobs in his administration than when he became president. Fewer jobs than when he became president. First one in American history. Secondly, the people who have lost their jobs are those people who have been on the front lines, those people who have been saving our lives, those people who have been out there dying, people who have been putting themselves in the way to make sure that we could all try to make it. And the idea that he is insisting that we go forward and open when you have almost half the states in America with a significant increase in COVID deaths and COVID cases in the United States of America. And he wants to open it up more. Why does he want to open it up? Why doesn't he take care of the American? You can't fix the economy until you fix the COVID crisis. And he has no intention of doing anything about making it better for you all at home in terms of your health and your safety. Schools. Why aren't schools open? Because it costs a lot of money to open them safely. You know, they were going to give, his administration was going to give the teachers and school students masks. And then they decided, no, couldn't do that because it's not a national emergency. Not a national emergency. They've done nothing to help small businesses. Nothing. They're closing. 1 in 6 is now gone. He ought to get on the job and take care of the needs of the American people so we can open safely.
All right. Your time is up, sir. Well, you're going to get to it.
I have to respond to that.
Well,
No, you don't.
2 minutes, sir.
Excuse me, he made a statement.
So did you.
People want their schools open. They don't want to be shut down. They don't want their state shut down. They want their restaurants. I look at New York. It's so sad what's happening in New York. It's almost like a ghost town. And I'm not sure it can ever recover what they've done in New York. People want their places open. They want to get back to their lives. They'll be careful, but they want their schools open. I'm the one that brought back football. By the way, I brought back Big Ten football. It was me, and I'm very happy to do it. And the people of Ohio are very proud of me. And you know how I found out? When it took a
Gentlemen,
phony
we're going to
ad.
get to your economic plans going forward in a moment. But first, Mr. President, as you well know, there's a new report that in 2016, the year you were elected president, and 2017, your first year as president, that you paid $750 a year in federal income tax each of those years. I know that you pay a lot of other taxes, but I'm asking you the specific question. Is it true that you pay $750 in federal income taxes each of those 2 years?
I paid millions of dollars in taxes, millions of dollars of income tax. And let me just tell you, there was a story in one of the papers.
Show us your tax.
I paid $38 million 1 year. I paid $27 million.
Show us your tax
1 year.
returns.
I went. You'll see it as soon as it's finished. You'll see it.
Go, Joe.
What I do,
Get into
go
it.
to the Board of Elections. There's a 118-page or so report that says everything I have, every bank I have, I'm totally under leveraged because the assets are extremely good, and we have a I built
Sir,
a
I'm
great
asking you a
company.
specific question, which
But
is.
let me tell you.
I understand all of that. I understand all of that. No, Mr. President,
Go ahead.
I'm asking you a question. Will you tell us how much you paid in federal income taxes in 2016 and 2017?
Millions of dollars.
You paid millions of dollars?
Millions of dollars,
So
yes.
not some
Millions of dollars, and you'll get to see it.
I-
And you'll get to see
When?
it. But let
In
me just
July?
tell you, Chris, let me just say something, that it was the tax laws. I don't want to pay tax. Before I came here, I was a private developer. I was a private business people. Like every other private person, unless they're stupid, they go through the laws, and that's what it is. He passed a tax bill that gave us all these privileges for depreciation and for tax credits. We built a building and we get tax credits like the hotel on Pennsylvania Avenue. You get a massive, which by the way, was given to me by the Obama administration, if you can believe that. Now the man got fired right after that happened, but
Vice President Biden, you want to respond?
Yeah, I do want to respond. Look, the tax code that made him, that put him in a position that he pays less tax than a school teacher makes, on the money a school teacher makes, is because of him he says he's smart because he can take advantage of the tax code. And he does take advantage of the tax code. That's why I'm going to eliminate the Trump tax cuts. And we're going to eliminate those tax cuts and make sure that we invest in the people who in fact need the help. People out there need help.
But why didn't you do it over the last 25 years?
Because you are president screwing things up.
You were a senator, and
You're
by
the worst
way,
president America has ever had.
Hey,
Come
Joe,
on.
let me just say, Joe, I've done more in 47 months. I've done more than you've done in 47 years, Joe. We've done things that you never even thought of,
Okay.
including fixing the broken military that you gave me, including taking care of your vets.
Mr. President, we're talking about the economy. I'd like to ask you about your plans going forward, because, Mr. President, your economic plan, if you were to be elected president, focuses a lot on big government, big taxes, big spending. I want to focus first on the taxes. You propose more than $4 trillion over a decade in new taxes on individuals making more than $400,000 a year and on corporations. President Trump says that that kind of an increase in taxes is going to hurt the economy as it's just coming out of a recession.
Well, just take a look at what is the analysis done by Wall Street firms. Points out that my economic plan would create 7 million more jobs than his in 4 years, number one. And number two, it would create an additional $1 trillion in economic growth, because it would be about buying American. That we're going to make, this federal government spends $600 billion a year on everything from ships to steel to buildings and the like. And under my proposal, we're going to make sure that every penny of that has to be made by a company.
But respectfully, sir, I'm talking about taxes, not spending.
Well, by the way, I'm going to eliminate a significant number of the tax. I'm going to make the corporate tax 28%. It shouldn't be 21%. You have 91 companies, in the Fortune 500 who don't pay a single penny in tax, making billions of dollars.
Why didn't you do it
Billions
before
of
when you were
dollars.
Vice President Obama?
Because you, in fact, passed that. That was your tax proposal.
I got it done, and you know what happened?
And you got it done.
Our economy boomed
And
like it's never boomed.
the economy is
Mr. President, let me pick up on that. You would continue your free market approach, lower taxes, more deregulation, correct?
Not lower taxes for American people.
But in Obama's, you talk about the economy booming, it turns out that in Obama's final 3 years as president, more jobs were created, 1.5 million more jobs than in the first 3 years of your presidency.
They had the slowest recovery economic recovery since 1929. It was the slowest recovery. Also, they took over something that was down here. All you had to do is turn on the lights and you pick up a lot. But they had the slowest economic recovery since 1929. Let me tell you about the stock market. When the stock market goes up, that means jobs. It also means 401ks. if you got in, if you ever became president with your ideas, you want to terminate my taxes, I'll tell you what, you'll lose half of the companies that have poured in here will leave, and plenty
Half
of
of the
companies that are
companies-
already here, they'll leave for
Hardly
other
any
places.
companies have-
They will leave, and you will have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen.
Look,
Mr.
we,
Vice-
Hello? Yeah. Oh, you're done, are you? Okay, then how much do we owe you? 340, okay. We'll bring the money down. Okay, did you cut those pieces to size? Yeah. Yeah, just leave them on the floor and yeah, it's 340, alright. We'll come down and pay you, mate. Okay, thanks. We'll give you another 40.
What are your thoughts on it so far, the debate?
Oh, Biden's in front by a fucking mile.
we brought back, I was asked to bring back Chrysler and General Motors. We brought them back right here in the state of Ohio and Michigan. He blew it. They're gone. He blew it. And in fact, they're going.
Ohio had the best year it's ever had last year. Michigan had the best year they've ever had.
That is not
Many
true.
car companies came in from Germany, from China, went to Michigan, went to Ohio.
They're not having.
And they didn't come in with you.
Mr. Vice President, go ahead.
And so you take a look at what he's actually done. He's done very little. Its trade deals are the same way. He talks about these great trade deals. You know, he talks about the art of the deal. China's perfected the art of the steal. We have a higher deficit with China now than we did before. We have the highest trade deficit
China
with
ate
Mexico.
your lunch. They
All right,
ate
gentlemen,
10%. China ate your lunch, Joe. And no wonder your son goes in and he takes out billions of dollars. Takes out billions of dollars to manage. He makes millions of dollars. And also, while we're at it, why is it, just out of curiosity, the mayor of Moscow's wife gave your son $3.5 million. What did he do to deserve it? What did he do with Marissa to deserve $183,000?
None of that is true.
Oh, really? He didn't
Totally-
get $3.5 million?
Mr. President,
It's
Mr.
totally-
President, please.
Totally
ask the question.
discredited. Totally discredited. And by the way,
Well, wait, he didn't get $3.5 million, Joe?
Mr. Vice.
He got
Mr.
$3.5 million.
President,
that is not true.
Oh, really?
Mr. President, it's an open discussion, please.
No,
It's a fact.
Well,
There's
you
no-
have raised an issue, let the Vice President answer.
Discredited.
Did
It was
Marissa
a
pay him
report-
$183,000 a month with no experience in energy?
Mr.
Look,
President,
my son did nothing wrong at Burisma.
I think he did.
Mr.
The only guy
President,
that
let him
does-
answer.
He doesn't want to let me answer because he knows I have the truth. His position has been totally, thoroughly discredited.
By who?
And you
The
can-
media.
By everybody. Well, by the
By the
media,
media,
by our
because they're
allies,
easy to
by
talk
the
about
World
because they're
Bank,
embarrassed.
by everyone as discredited. Matter of fact.
Shut up, asshole!
Testified under oath.
So let me ask you this.
Anyway,
Joe.
No, go ahead, Mr. I'm listening to you.
People under.
You got $3.5
He
million from Moscow.
He testified under oath in his administration, said, I did my job and I did it very well. I did it
I'd like to
under
know who
oath.
they are.
Well, I'll give you the list
I'll
of the
fire
people who
them.
testified.
Go ahead, sir.
Sure, you've already fired most of them because they did a good job.
Some people don't.
Well,
with
here's,
that. With you.
Go ahead, you get the, wait a minute, you get the final word, Mr.
well, it's hard to get any word in with this clown. Excuse me, this.
Hey, let me just say,
I'm Mr. President,
$3.5
Mr.
million,
President.
Joe.
That is simply.
Why did
not
he
true.
deserve $3.5 million from Moscow?
Look, here's the deal. We want to talk about families and ethics. I don't want to do that. I mean, his family we could talk about all night. His family's
My
already.
family lost a fortune by coming down and helping us with government.
And that's such
And
a.
the right-
Mr.
That's such
Every
a great.
single one of them lost.
This
a-
is not
Mr.
about
President,
my family or his family, it's about your family.
They didn't
American
make
people.
$3.5 million.
He doesn't, that's not true. It doesn't want to talk about what you need. You, the American people. It's about you. That's what we're talking about.
All right, that's the end of the subject, we're moving on.
It didn't take that.
Vice President, no.
Can I be honest? It's a very important.
Try to be
question.
honest.
He stood up.
No,
He stood up.
the answer to the
and he
question is no.
Ukraine.
No.
Cut him off, fuck him!
That is
You know what,
absolutely not
Stop.
true.
You're gonna have,
Not true.
gentlemen, I hate to raise my voice, but it seems to me, why should I be different than the two of you? So here's the
That's
deal.
the point.
We have 6 segments. We have ended that segment. We're going to go to the next segment. In that segment, you each are going to have 2 uninterrupted moments. In those 2 uninterrupted minutes, Mr. President, you can say anything you want. I'm going to ask a question about race, but if you want to answer about something else, go ahead. But I think that the country would be better served if we allowed both people to speak with fewer interruptions. I'm appealing to you, sir, to do that.
Well, and him too.
Well, frankly, you've been doing more interrupting.
Oh, that's all right, but he does plenty.
But, well, less than you, sir, less than
plenty.
No, less than you have. Let's please continue on. The issue of race. Vice President Biden, you say that President Trump's response to the violence in Charlottesville 3 years ago, when he talked about very fine people on both sides, was what directly led you to launch this run for president.
Oh, yeah, sure.
President Trump, you have often said that you believe you have done more for Black Americans than any president, with the possible exception of Abraham Lincoln. My question for the 2 of you is, why should voters trust you rather than your opponent to deal with the race issues facing this country over the next 4 years? Vice President Biden, you go first.
It's about equity and equality. It's about decency. It's about the Constitution. And we have never walked away from trying to require equity for everyone, equality for the whole of America. But we've never accomplished it. But we've never walked away from it like he has done. It is true. The reason I got in the races with most people, close your eyes. Remember what those people look like coming out of the fields carrying torches, their veins bulging, spewing anti-Semitic bile, and accompanied by the Ku Klux Klan. A young woman got killed. And they asked the president what he thought. He said there were very fine people on both sides. No president's ever said anything like that.
It is
Now, second point I'd make to you is that when Floyd was killed, when Mr. Floyd was killed, there was a peaceful protest in front of the White House. What did he do? He came out of his bunker, had the military use tear gas on him so he could walk across to a church and hold up a Bible. And then what happened after that? The bishop of that very church said that it was a disgrace. The general who was with him said all he ever wants to do is divide people, not unite people at all. This is a president who has used everything as a dog whistle to try to generate racist hatred, racist division. This is a man who, in fact, you talk about helping African Americans. 1 in 1,000 African Americans has been killed because of the coronavirus. And if he doesn't do something quickly, by the end of the year, 1 in 500 will have been killed. 1 in 500 African Americans. This man is the savior of African Americans. This man cares at all. This man's done virtually nothing. Look, the fact is that you have to look at what he talks about. You have to look at what he did. And what he did has been disastrous for the African American community.
So, President Trump, you have 2 minutes. Why should Americans trust you over your opponent to deal with racism?
You did a crime bill, 1994, where you called them super predators, African Americans, super predators, and they've never forgotten it. They've never forgotten it, Joe.
No, sir, it's his 2 minutes.
So you did that, and they called you super predator, and I'm letting people out of jail now that you have treated the African American population community, you have treated the black community about as bad as anybody in this country. You did the 1990, and that's why, if you look at the polls, I'm doing better than any Republican has done in a long time, because they saw what you did. You called them super predators, and you've called them worse than that, because you look back at your testimony over the years, you've called them a lot worse than that. As far as the church is concerned, and as far as the generals are concerned, we just got the support of 250 military leaders and generals, total support. Law enforcement, almost every law enforcement group in the United States. I have Florida, I have Texas, I have Ohio, I have Portland. The sheriff just came out today and he said, I support President Trump. I don't think you have any law enforcement. You can't even say the word law enforcement, because if you say those words, you're going to lose all of your radical left supporters. And why aren't you saying those words, Joe? Why don't you say the words law enforcement? Because, you know what, if they called us in Portland, we would put out that fire in a half an hour, but they won't do it because they're run by radical left Democrats. If you look at Chicago, if you look at any place you want to look, Seattle, they heard we were coming in the following day and they put up their hands and we got back Seattle. Minneapolis, we got it back, Joe, because we believe in law and order, but you don't. The top 10 cities and just about the top 40 cities are run by Democrats and in many cases radical left, and they've got you wrapped around their finger, Joe, to a point where you don't want to say anything about law and order. And I'll tell you what, the people of this country want and demand law and order, and you're afraid to even say it.
All right. I want to return to the question of race. Vice President Biden, after the grand jury in the Breonna Taylor case decided not to charge any of the police with homicide, you said it raises the question, quote, whether justice could be equally applied in America. Do you believe that there is a separate but unequal system of justice for blacks in this country?
Yes, there's systemic injustice in this country, in education and work and in law enforcement and the way in which it's enforced. But look, the vast majority of police officers are good, decent, honorable men and women. They risk their lives every day to take care of us. But there are some bad apples, and when they occur, when they find them, they have to be sorted out. They have to be held accountable. They have to be held accountable. And what I'm going to do as President of the United States is call together an entire group of people at the White House, well, everything from the civil rights groups to the police officers, the police chiefs, and we're going to work this out. We're going to work this out so we change the way in which we have more transparency in when these things happen. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to George Floyd. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to Breonna Taylor. Most don't like it. But we have to have a system where people are held accountable. And by the way, violence in response is never appropriate. Never appropriate. Peaceful protest is. Violence is never appropriate.
All right,
what is peaceful protest? When they run through the middle of the town and burn down your stores and kill people all over the place?
That is not peaceful. President Trump, I'm not asking.
But you say it is.
President Trump, I'd like to continue with the issue of race. I promise we're going to get to the issue of law and order in a moment. This month, your administration directed federal agencies to end racial sensitivity training that addresses white privilege or critical race theory. Why did you decide to do that, to end racial sensitivity training? And do you believe that there is systemic racism in this country, sir?
I ended it because it's racist. I ended it because a lot of people were complaining that they were asked to do things that were absolutely insane, that it was a radical revolution that was taking place in our military, in our schools, all over the place, and you know it, and so does everybody else. And he would know.
What is radical about racial sensitivity training?
If you were a certain person, you had no status in life. It was sort of a reversal. And if you look at the people, we would pay people hundreds of thousands of dollars to teach very bad ideas, and frankly, very sick ideas. And really, they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to allow that to happen. We have to go back to the core values of this country. They were teaching people that our country is a horrible place, it's a racist place, and they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to allow that to happen.
Vice President Biden?
Nobody's doing that. He's racist.
You just don't.
Here's the deal. I know a lot more about this than you.
Let him finish.
The fact is that there is racial insensitivity. People have to be made aware of what other people feel like, what insults them, what is demeaning to them. It's important that people know they don't want to. Many people don't want to hurt other people's feelings, but it makes a big difference. It makes a gigantic difference in the way a child is able to grow up and have a sense of self-esteem. It's a little bit like how this guy and his friends look down on so many people. They look down their nose on people like Irish Catholics like me and grew up in Scranton. They look down on people who don't have money. They look down on people who are of a different faith. They look down on people who are a different color. In fact, we're all Americans. The only way we're going to bring this country together is bring everybody together. There's nothing we cannot do if we do it together. We can take this on and we can defeat racism.
President Trump, sir.
During the Obama-Biden administration, there was tremendous division. There was hatred. You look at Ferguson, you go to many places. Look at Oakland. Look what happened in Oakland. Look what happened in Baltimore. Look what happened. Frankly, it was more of the than what I'm even seeing now. But the reason is that the Democrats that run these cities don't want to talk like you about law and order.
Violent
You still
crime.
haven't mentioned.
Violent
Are you in
crime.
favor of law and order?
I'm in favor of law. You follow
Are you in
it, and a little
favor
bit
of law and order? Go ahead,
Yes, I'm
somebody.
in favor.
You asked a question, let him finish.
Law and order.
This is
Law and order with justice, where people get treated fairly. And the fact of the matter is, violent crime went down 17%, 15% in our administration. It's gone up on his watch.
Went down much more than ours.
All right, we're down. Mr. President, you're going to Mr. President,
Every record of the
Mr. President, you're going to be very happy because we're now going to talk about law and order.
Since we had trouble, we're Democratic-run cities.
That's exactly my question. There has been a dramatic increase in homicides in America this summer particularly, and you often blame that on Democratic mayors and Democratic governors, but in fact there have been equivalent spikes in Republican-led cities like Tulsa and Fort Worth. So the question is this really a party issue?
I think it's a party issue. You can bring in a couple of examples, but if you look at Chicago, what's going on in Chicago, where 53 people were shot and 8 died shot. If you look at New York, where it's going up like nobody's ever seen anything, the numbers are going up 100, 150, 200%. Crime. It is crazy what's going on. And he doesn't want to say law and order because he can't, because he'll lose his radical left supporters. And once he does that, it's over with. But if he ever got to run this country and they ran it the way he would want to run it, we would have, our suburbs would be gone. By the way, our suburbs would be gone. And you would see problems like you've never seen.
You would know a suburb unless you took a wrong turn.
Oh, I know suburbs.
He would not. I was raised in the suburbs. This is not 1950. All these dog whistles and racism don't work anymore. Suburbs are by and large integrated. There's many people today driving their kids to soccer practice and or to black and white and Hispanic in the same car as there have been any time in the past. What really is a threat to the suburbs and their safety is his failure to deal with COVID. They're dying in the suburbs. His failure to deal with the environment. They're being flooded. They're being burned out because his refusal to do anything. That's why the suburbs are in trouble.
I do want to talk about this issue of law and order, though, and in the joint recommendation that came from the Biden-Bernie Sanders task force, you talked about, quote, reimagining policing. First of all, what does reimagining policing mean, and do you support?
It means.
Let me, if I might finish the question. What does reimagining policing mean, and do you support the Black Lives Matter call for community control of policing?
Look, what I support is the police having the opportunity to deal with the problems they face. And I'm totally opposed to defunding the police officers. As a matter of fact, local police, the only one defunding it, his budget calls for a $400 million cut in local law enforcement assistance. They need more assistance. They need, when they show up for a 9/11 call, to have someone with them as a psychologist or psychiatrist to keep them from having to use force and be able to talk people down. We have to have community policing like we had before, where the officers get to know the people in the communities. That's when crime went down. It didn't go up, it went down. And so we have to be engaged.
That's not what they're talking about, Chris. That's not what they're talking
about.
That's
you scumbag!
That is not true.
He doesn't have any law support. He has no law enforcement.
That's not true.
Almost
That's
nothing.
not. Look.
Oh, really? Who do you have? Name one group that supports you. Name one group that came out and supported you. Go ahead.
Look,
Think. We have time.
We don't have time to do anything.
All right.
Name one law enforcement group that came out and supported
Gentlemen, I think I'm going to take back the moderator's
I don't
role,
think there are any.
and I want to get to another subject, which is the issue of protests. In many cities that have turned violent, in Portland, Oregon especially, we had more than 100 straight days of protests, which I think you would agree. You talk about peaceful protests, many of those turned into riots. Mr. Vice President, you say that people who commit crimes should be held accountable. The question I have, though, is, as the Democratic nominee, and earlier tonight you said that you are the Democratic Party right now, have you ever called the Democratic mayor of Portland or the Democratic governor of Oregon and said, hey, you got to stop this, bring in the National Guard, do whatever it takes, but you stop the days and months of violence in Portland?
I don't hold public office now. I am a former vice president. I've made it clear in my public statements that the violence should be prosecuted. it should be prosecuted. And anyone who commits it
But you
should be
never called
prosecuted.
for the people, that's the leader, excuse me, sir. You have never called for the leaders in Portland and in Oregon to call and bring in the National Guard and knock off 100 days of riots.
They can, in fact, take care of it if he just stay out of the way. Look here.
Oh, really?
Here.
Oh, really?
Here's
But
what
I sent in the
wait,
U.S.
I asked you a
Marshals to
question.
get the killer of a young man in the middle of the street, and they shot him. And for 3 days,
President Trump,
Portland didn't do anything. I sent in the U.S. Marshals, and they took care of business.
Go ahead, sir.
And by the way, his own former spokesperson said, riots and chaos and violence help his cause. That's what this is all about.
I don't know who said that.
I do.
Who?
I think Kellyanne Conway.
I don't think she said that.
She said that. And so here's the point is that's what he is, keeps trying to rile everything up. He doesn't want to calm things down. Instead of going in and talking to people and saying, let's get everybody together, figure out how to deal with this. What's he do? He just pours gasoline in the fire constantly, and every single solitary
Okay, and to end this, button up this segment, I'm going to give you a minute to answer, sir. You have repeatedly criticized.
I have to answer his statement.
You have
His statement?
repeatedly. You have
Wait,
repeatedly. No, you've been talking
He
back
made
and
a
forth.
statement.
I'm asking you.
I would love to end it.
sir.
I would love to end it.
If you want to switch seats,
We can very quickly.
We can do that, but I'm
Send in the National Guard, it would be over, there'd be no problem.
Okay.
But they don't want to accept the National Guard.
You have repeatedly criticized the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing
That's right.
extremist groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
Sure,
Are you
I'm willing
prepared to
do that,
specifically
but
do it? Go ahead, sir.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right
So
wing.
what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see
Well,
peace.
then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it. You want to call them? What do you want to call them? Give me a name. Give me a
White
name.
supremacists and
Who would
right
you like me to condemn?
supremacists and right
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem. This is a left.
FBI director.
This is a left-wing problem.
White supremacists. Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you got it.
Not
Kid.
militia. That's what his
It's an idea.
FBI director said.
Well, then, you know what?
No, we're done, sir. We're moving on to the next.
That is over the head. That's not an idea.
Everybody in
Antifa
your
is
administration tells you the truth is a bad idea.
Can I tell you what?
You have no ideas.
Antifa is a dangerous
All right,
radical
gentlemen, we're
group.
now moving on to the Trump
And
and
you're
Biden
careful
records.
with them. They'll overthrow you.
When a president, I'm going to ask
Oh, he's getting a bit riled, old Trump.
a second term.
Come on, Joe, get into him.
Referendum on his record. But Vice President Biden, you like to quote one of your dad's sayings, which is, don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative. And in this case, sir, the alternative. Looking at both of your records, I'm going to ask each of you, why should voters elect you president over your opponent in this segment? President Trump, you go first, 2 minutes.
Because there has never been an administration or president who has done more than I've done in a period of 3.5 years. And that's despite the impeachment hoax. And you saw what happened today with Hillary Clinton, where it was a whole big con job. But despite going through all of these things, where I had to fight both flanks and behind me and above, there has never been an administration that's done what I've done. The greatest, before COVID came in, the greatest economy in history, lowest unemployment numbers. Everything was good. Everything was going. And by the way, there was unity going to happen. People were calling me for the first time in years. They were calling and they were saying, it's time maybe. And then what happened? We got hit, but now we're building it back up again. A rebuilding of the military, including Space Force and all of the other things. A fixing of the VA, which was a mess under him. 308,000 people died because they didn't have proper health care. He was a mess. And we now got a 91% approval rating at the VA, our vets. We take care of our vets. But we've rebuilt our military. The job that we've done, and I'll tell you something, some people say maybe the most important. The first term, I'll have approximately 300 federal judges and Court of Appeals judges, 300, and hopefully 3 great Supreme Court judges, justices. That is a record the likes of which very few people, and you know one of the reasons I'll have so many judges? because President Obama and him left me 128 judges to fill. When you leave office, you don't leave any judges. That's like, you just don't do that. They left 128 openings, and if I were a member of his party, because they have a little different philosophy, I'd say if you left us 128 openings, you can't be a good president, you can't be a good vice president, but I want to thank you because it gives us almost, it'll probably be above that number by the end of this term, 300 judges, it's a record.
Looking at both of your records, why should voters elect you president as opposed to President Trump? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Under this president, we've become weaker, sicker, poorer, more divided, and more violent. When I was vice president, we inherited a recession. I was asked to fix it. I did. We left him a booming economy, and he caused the recession. With regard to being weaker, the fact is that I've gone head to head with Putin and made it clear to him we're not going to take any of his stuff. He's Putin's puppy. He still refuses to even say anything to Putin about the bounty on the heads of American soldiers.
Your son got $3 million.
And by the way, my son,
Mr. President, your campaign agreed that both sides would get 2-minute answers uninterrupted. Well, your side agreed to it, and why don't you observe what your campaign agreed to as a ground rule, okay, sir?
he never keeps his word.
No, I'm not asking. That was a rhetorical question.
Can you add back 30 seconds?
Yeah, yes, you may have.
All right.
Go ahead.
So, thirdly, we're poor. The billionaires have gotten much more wealthy by a tune of over $300 to $400 billion more just since COVID. You and the whole, you got less. You're in more trouble than you were before. In terms of being more violent, when we were in office, there were 15% less violence in America than there is today. He's president of the United States. It's on his watch. And with regard to more divided, the nation can't stay divided. We can't be this way. And speaking of my son, the way you talk about the military, the way you talk about them being losers and being and just being suckers. My son was in Iraq. He spent a year there. He got the Bronze Star. He got the Conspicuous Service Medal. He was not a loser. He was a patriot. And the people left behind there were heroes. And I resent.
Are you talking about Hunter? Are you talking about
I'm talking about my son, Beau Biden. You're talking about.
I don't know, Beau. I know Hunter got thrown out of the military. He was thrown out, dishonorably discharged.
That's not true. It wasn't dishonorably.
Cocaine use. And he didn't have a job until you became vice president. And once you became vice president, he made a fortune in Ukraine, in China, in Moscow,
That is simply
and various
not
other places.
true.
He made a fortune.
My son,
and he didn't have a job.
My son, like a lot of people we know at home, had a drug problem. He's overtaken it. He's fixed it. He's worked on it. And I'm proud of him.
But why was he given tens of millions of dollars?
He wasn't given tens of millions of dollars. That is totally discredited.
We've already been through this. I think the American people would rather hear about more substantial subjects. Well, you know, as the moderator, sir, I'm going to make a judgment call here.
$3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow.
Let's talk about it. That report is totally discredited. Mitt Romney on that committee said it wasn't worth taxpayers' money, that report. It was written for political reasons.
You know, I'd like to talk about climate change.
So would I.
Okay. The forest fires in the West are raging now. They have burned millions of acres. They have displaced hundreds of thousands of people. When state officials there blame the fires on climate change, Mr. President, you said, I don't think the science knows. Over your 4 years, you have pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accord. You have rolled back a number of Obama environmental records. What do you believe about the science of climate change, and what will you do in the next 4 years to confront it?
I want crystal clean water and air. I want beautiful clean air. We have now the lowest carbon. If you look at our numbers right now, we are doing phenomenally. But I haven't destroyed our businesses. Our businesses aren't put out of commission. If you look at the Paris Accord, it was a disaster from our standpoint. And people are actually very happy about what's going on because our businesses are doing well. As far as the fires are concerned, you need forest management in addition to everything else. the forest floors are loaded up with trees, dead trees that are years old, and they're like tinder, and leaves and everything else. You drop a cigarette in there, the whole forest burns down. You've got to have forest management.
What do you believe about the science of climate change, sir?
I believe that we have to do everything we can to have immaculate air, immaculate water, and do whatever else we can that's good. You know, we're planting 1 billion trees, the Billion Tree Project, and it's very
Do you
exciting.
believe that human pollution, greenhouse gas emissions contributes to the global warming of
I
the
think
planet?
a lot of things do, but I think to an extent, yes. I think to an extent, yes. But I also think we have to do better management of our forests. Every year, I get the call, California's burning. California's burning. If that was cleaned, if you had forest management, good forest management, you wouldn't be getting those calls. You know, in Europe, they live their forest cities. They're called forest cities. They maintain their forests. They manage their forests. I was with the head of a major country. It's a forest city. He said, sir, we have trees that are far more, they ignite much easier than California. There shouldn't be that problem. I spoke with the governor about it. I'm getting along very well with the governor. But I said, you know, at some point, you can't every year have hundreds of thousands of acres of land just burned to the ground. That's burning down because of a lack of
But
management.
sir, if you believe in the science of climate change, why have you rolled back the Obama Clean Power Plan, which limited carbon emissions in power plants? Why have you relaxed?
Because it was driving energy prices through the sky.
Why have you relaxed fuel economy standards that are going to create more pollution from cars
Well,
and
not
trucks?
really, because what's happening is the car is much less expensive and it's a much safer car, and you're talking about a tiny difference, and then what would happen, because of the cost of the car, you would have at least double and triple the number of cars purchased. We have the old slugs out there that are 10, 12 years old. If you did that, the car would be safer, it would be much cheaper by
But in the case of
$3,500.
California, they've simply
No, but it
ignored
would take
your
a lot of cars
roadmap.
off the market because people would be able to afford a car. Now, and by the way, we're going to see how that turns out. But a lot of people agree with me, many people. The car has gotten so expensive because they have computers all over the place for an extra little bit of gasoline. And I'm okay with electric cars too. I think I'm all for electric cars. I've given big incentives for electric cars. But what they've done in California is just crazy.
Vice President Biden, I'd like you to respond to the president's climate change record, but I also want to ask you about a concern. You proposed $2 trillion in green jobs. You talked about new limits, not abolishing, but new limits on fracking, ending the use of fossil fuels to generate electricity by 2035, and zero net emission of greenhouse gases by 2050. The president says a lot of these things would tank the economy and cost millions of jobs.
He's absolutely wrong, number one. Number two, if in fact, during our administration, the Recovery Act, I was in charge, able to bring down the cost of renewable energy to cheaper than or as cheap as coal and gas and oil. Nobody's going to build another coal-fired plant in America. No one's going to build another oil-fired plant in America. They're going to move to renewable energy, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that we are able to take the federal fleet and turn it into a fleet that's run on their electric vehicles. Making sure that we can do that, we're going to put 500,000 charging stations and all of the highways that we're going to be building in the future. We're going to build an economy that in fact is going to provide for the ability of us to take 4 million buildings and make sure that they in fact are weatherized in a way that in fact they'll emit significantly less gas and oil because the heat will not be going out. There's so many things that we can do now to create thousands and thousands of jobs. We can get to net zero in terms of energy production by 2035. Not only not costing people jobs, creating millions of good paying jobs, not 15 bucks an hour, but prevailing wage, by having a new infrastructure that in fact is green. And the first thing I will do, I will rejoin the Paris Accord. I will join the Paris Accord because with us out of it, look what's happening. It's all falling apart. And talk about someone who has no relationship with foreign policy. Brazil, the rainforests of Brazil are being torn down, are being ripped down. more carbon is absorbed in that rainforest than every bit of carbon that's emitted in the United States. Instead of doing something about that, I would be gathering up and making sure we had the countries of the world coming up with $20 billion, say, here's $20 billion, stop tearing down the forest. And if you don't, then you're going to have significant economic consequences.
What about the argument that President Trump basically says that you have to balance environmental interests and economic interests, and he's drawn his line?
Well, he hadn't drawn a line. He still, for example, make sure that he wants to make sure that methane's not a problem. You can now emit more methane without it being a problem. Methane. This is a guy who says that you don't have to have mileage standards for automobiles that exist now. This is a guy who says that, well, the fact is, it's all true. And here's the deal.
Talking about the Green New Deal, and it's not $2 billion or $20 billion, as you said. It's $100 trillion.
I'm talking about.
Where they want to rip down buildings and rebuild the building.
No,
it's the
that
dumbest,
is not,
most ridiculous. Where airplanes are out of business, where two-car systems are out, where they want to take out the cows too. That's not true either, right? This is a 100 trillion. That's more money than our country could make in 100 years if we
not the case.
All right, let me because I actually, wait a minute, sir. I actually have studied your plan, and it includes upgrading 4 million buildings, weatherizing 2 million homes over 4 years, building 1.5 million energy-efficient homes. So the question becomes, the president is saying, I think some people who support the president would say that sounds like it's going to cost a lot of money and hurt the economy.
What it's going to do is going to create thousands and millions of jobs, good paying jobs.
But let him finish, sir.
He doesn't know how to do that. The fact is, it's going to create millions of good paying jobs, and these tax incentives for people to weatherize, which he wants to get rid of. It's going to make the economy much safer. Look how much we're paying now to deal with the hurricanes. By the way, he has an answer for hurricanes. He said maybe we should drop a nuclear weapon on them. They may.
I never said that.
That's what the agent said.
You made it up.
And here's the deal.
You make up.
We are going to be in a position where we can create hard, good jobs by making sure the environment is clean and we all are in better shape. We spend billions of dollars on floods, hurricanes, rising seas. We're in real trouble. Look what's happened just in the Midwest with these storms that come through and wipe out entire sections and counties in Iowa. That didn't happen before. They're because of global warming. We make up 15% of the world's problem. But the rest of the world, we got to get them to come along. That's why we have to get back into the Paris Accord.
All right, gentlemen.
Wait a minute, Chris. So why didn't he do it for 47 years? You were vice president. Why didn't you get the world? China sends up real dirt into the air. Russia does. India does. They all do. We're supposed to be good. And by the way, he made a couple of statements. The Green New Deal is $100 trillion.
That is not my plan.
That's
the Green New Deal is not my plan.
I want to rebuild that.
If he knew anything about it,
he made a statement about the military. He said I said something about the military. He and his friends made it up, and then they went with it. I never said it.
Okay.
That is
what
not
he
true.
did is he said he called the military stupid bastards.
I
He
did
said
not
it on
say
tape.
that.
He said stupid
Mr.
bastards. He
Stop.
said it.
Stop.
I would never say that.
Play it.
Go ahead. Mr. Vice President answered his final question.
The final question is, I can't remember which of all his branches.
I'm having a little trouble myself, but and about the economy and about this question of what it's going to cost.
The economy.
I mean, the Green New Deal and the idea of what your environmental changes will do.
The Green New Deal will pay for itself as we move forward. You're not going to build plants that, in fact, are great polluting plants.
Do you support the Green New Deal?
Pardon me?
You support?
No, I don't support the Green New Deal.
You don't? Oh, well, that's a big statement.
I support
the radical left.
I support the Biden plan that I put forward.
Okay.
The Biden plan, which is different than what he calls the radical Green New Deal.
All right, gentlemen, final segment, election integrity. As we meet tonight, millions of Americans are receiving mail-in ballots or going to vote early. How confident should we be that this will be a fair election, and what are you prepared to do over the next 5 plus weeks, because it'll not only be to Election Day, but also counting some ballots, mail-in ballots after Election Day. What are you prepared to do to reassure the American people that the next president will be the legitimate winner of this election? In this final segment, Mr. Vice President, you go first.
Prepared to let people vote. They should go to iwillvote.com. Decide how they're going to vote, when they're going to vote, and what means by which they're going to vote. His own Homeland Security Director, and as well as the FBI Director, says there is no evidence at all that mail-in ballots are a source of being manipulated and cheating. They said that. The fact is that there are going to be millions of people because of COVID that are going to be voting by mail-in ballots, like he does, by the way. He sits behind the Resolute desk and sends his ballot to Florida, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that those people who want to vote in person are able to vote, because enough poll watchers are there to make sure they can socially distance. The polls are open on time, and their polls stay open until the votes are counted. And this is all about trying to dissuade people from voting, because he's trying to scare people into thinking that it's not going to be legitimate. Show up and vote. You will determine the outcome of this election. Vote, vote, vote. If you're able to vote early in your state, vote early. If you're able to vote in person, vote in person. Vote whatever way is the best way for you, because he cannot stop you from being able to determine the outcome of this election. And in terms of whether or not, when the votes are counted, and they're all counted, that will be accepted. If I win, that will be accepted. If I lose, they'll be accepted. But by the way, if in fact he says he's not sure what he's going to accept, well, let me tell you something. It doesn't matter, because if we get the votes, it's going to be all over. He's going to go. He can't stay in power. It won't happen. It won't happen. So vote. Just make sure you understand you have it in your control to determine what this country's going to look like the next 4 years. Is it going to change, or you get 4 more years of these lies?
Mr. President, 2 minutes.
So when I listened to Joe talking about a transition, there's been no transition from when I won. I won that election. And if you look at crooked Hillary Clinton, if you look at all of the different people, there was no transition, because they came after me trying to do a coup. They came after me spying on my campaign. They started from the day I won, and even before I won, from the day I came down the escalator with our First Lady. They were a disaster. They were a disgrace to our country. And we've caught them. We've caught them all. We've got it all on tape. We've caught them all. And by the way, you gave the idea for the Logan Act against General Flynn. You better take a look at that, because we caught you in a sense, and President Obama was sitting in the office. He knew about it too. So don't tell me about a free transition. As far as the ballots are concerned, it's a disaster. A solicited ballot, okay, solicited is okay. You're soliciting, you're asking, they send it back, you send it back. I did that. If you have an unsolicited, they're sending millions of ballots all over the country. That's fraud. They found them in creeks. They found some with the name Trump, just happened to have the name Trump just the other day in a waste paper basket. They're being sent all over the place. They sent 2 in a Democrat area. They sent out 1,000 ballots. Everybody got 2 ballots. This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen. The other thing, it's nice on November 3rd, you're watching and you see who won the election. And I think we're going to do well, because people are really happy with the job we've done. But you know what? We won't know. We might not know for months, because these ballots are going to be all over. Take a look at what happened in Manhattan. Take a look at what happened in New Jersey. Take a look at what happened in Virginia and other places. They're not losing 2%, 1%, which, by the way, is too much. An election, won or lost with that. They're losing 30 and 40%. It's a fraud, and it's a shame. And can you imagine where they say, you have to have your ballot in by November 10th. November 10th. That means that's 7 days after the election, in theory, should have been announced.
Okay.
We have major states with that.
Sir,
all run by Democrats.
2 minutes.
All run by Democrats. It's
President Trump,
it's a rigged
you're going to be able to continue. You have been charging for months that mail-in balloting is going to be a disaster. You say it's rigged, that it's going to lead to fraud. But in 2018, in the last midterm election, 31 million people voted mail-in voting. That was a quarter, more than a quarter of all the voters that year cast their ballots by mail. Now that millions of mail-in ballots have gone out, what are you going to do about it? And are you counting on the Supreme Court, including a Justice Barrett, to settle any dispute?
Yeah, I think I'm counting on them to look at the ballots, definitely. I hope we don't need them. in terms of the election itself. But for the ballots, I think so. Because what's happening is incredible. I read today, where at least 1% of the ballots for 2016 were invalidated. They take them, we don't like them, we don't like them.
But what are you going to do about it? There are millions of ballots going out.
What you do is you go and vote. You do a solicited ballot,
No,
and that's okay, or you go and vote.
I'm asking you about the fact that millions of people.
You go and vote. You go and vote, like they used to.
Millions of people.
You either do, Chris, a solicited ballot where you're sending it in, they're sending it back, and you're sending. They have mailmen with lots of it. Did you see what's going on? Take a look at West Virginia. Mailmen selling the ballots. They're being sold. They're being dumped in rivers. This is a horrible thing for our country. This is not going to end well. This is not going to end well.
5 states have had mail-in ballots for the last decade or more. 5, including 2 Republican states. And you don't have to solicit the ballot. It's sent to you. It's sent to your home. What they're saying is that it has to be a postmark by election day. If it doesn't get in until the 7th, 8th, 9th, it still should be counted. He's just afraid of counting the votes because
You're wrong.
I want to continue with you on this. Vice President Biden.
Chris, he's so wrong when he makes a statement like that.
Excuse me. Vice President Biden, the biggest problem, in fact, over the years with mail-in voting has not been fraud historically. It has been that sizable numbers, sometimes hundreds of thousands of ballots are thrown out because they have not been properly filled out, or there is some other irregularity, or they missed the deadline. So the question I have is, are you concerned that the Supreme Court, with a Justice Barrett, will settle any dispute?
I'm concerned that any court would settle this because here's the deal. When you get a ballot and you fill it out, you're supposed to have an affidavit. If you didn't know, you have someone say that this is me. You should be able to, if in fact you can verify that's you before the ballot is thrown out, that's sufficient to be able to count the ballot because someone made a mistake and not dotting the correct I. Who they voted for, testify, say who they voted for, say it's you, that is totally legitimate.
All right.
When you have 80 million ballots, Senate is swamping the system. You know it can't be done. You know it can't. And already,
all right. So now,
mail serves
gentlemen, in 8 states, we can keep talking. In 8 states, election workers are prohibited, currently by law, 8 states, from even beginning to process ballots, even take them out of the envelopes and flatten them until election day. That means that it's likely, because there's going to be a huge increase in mail-in balloting, we're not going to know on election night who the winner is, that it could be days, it could be weeks,
it could be months,
until we find out who the new president is. So first for you, sir, finally for the vice president, I hope neither of you will interrupt the other. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm during this extended period, not to engage in any civil unrest, and will you pledge tonight that you will not declare victory until the election has been independently certified? President Trump, you go first.
I'm urging my supporters to go into the polls and watch very carefully, because that's what has to happen. I am urging them to do it. As you know, today there was a big problem. In Philadelphia, they went in to watch. They're called poll watchers, a very safe, very nice thing. They were thrown out. They weren't allowed to watch. You know why? Because bad things happen in Philadelphia, bad things. And I am urging my people. I hope it's going to be a fair election. If it's a fair election, I am 100% on board. But if I see tens of thousands of ballots being manipulated, I can't go along with that. And I'll tell you what, from a common sense, I'll tell you what it means. It means you have a fraudulent election. You're sending out 80 million ballots. They're not equipped to. These people aren't equipped to handle it, number one. Number two, they cheat. They cheat. Hey, they found ballots in a waste paper basket 3 days ago, and they all had the name military ballots. They were military. They all had the name Trump on them.
Vice President
you think
Biden,
that's good?
Vice President Biden, final question for you. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm while the vote is counted, and will you pledge not to declare victory until the election is independently certified?
Yes. Here's the deal. We count the ballots, as you pointed out. Some of these ballots in some states can't even be opened until election day. And if there's thousands of ballots, it's going to take time to do it. And by the way, our military They've been voting by ballots since the end of the Civil War, in effect. And that's what's going to happen. Why was it not? Why is it for them somehow not fraudulent? It's the same process. It's honest. No one has established at all that there is fraud related to mail-in ballots. That somehow it's a fraudulent process.
It's already been established.
Oh, shut up.
Look at Carolyn Maloney's race.
You had an opportunity to
Look at
respond.
Carolyn Maloney. They have no idea what
Vice
happened.
President Biden, go ahead.
He has no idea what he's talking about. Here's the deal. The fact is, I will accept it, and he will too. You know why? Because once the winner is declared, after all the ballots are counted, all the votes are counted, that'll be the end of it. That'll be the end of it. And if it's me, in fact, fine. If it's not me, I'll support the outcome. And I'll be a president not just for the Democrats. I'll be a president for Democrats and Republicans. And this guy,
I want to say honest ballot count.
Gentlemen, you say that's the end of it? This is the end of this debate?
Honest ballot count.
We're
And I
going to
think
leave
he
it
does
there.
too.
To be continued as in more debates as we go on. President Trump, Vice President Biden, has been an interesting
Oh,
hour.
Trump's not happy.
I want to thank you both for participating in the first of 3 debates that you have agreed to engage in. We want to thank Case Western Reserve University and the Cleveland Clinic for hosting this event. The next debate, sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates, will be 1 week from tomorrow, October 7th, at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City. The 2 vice presidential nominees, Vice President Mike Pence and Senator Kamala Harris, will debate at 9 p.m. Eastern that night. We hope you watch. Until then, thank you and good night.
Clearly, this was the most chaotic presidential debate I've ever seen, and I suspect most of you, if not all of you, have ever seen most chaotic presidential debate, and it will certainly raising a lot of questions about the future of a presidential debate between these 2 candidates. I wouldn't be surprised, by the way, if this is the last presidential debate between the President of the United States and the former Vice President of the United States, but we shall see fairly soon. Joe Biden clearly showed up today. He went head-to-head with the President of the United States, who was often put on the defensive, interrupting the Vice President repeatedly. This will certainly be a relief to a lot of the Biden supporters who are going into this debate fairly nervous. The former Vice President clearly showed up. Jake, a lot to analyze and discuss.
Well, that was a hot mess inside a dumpster fire, inside a train wreck. That was the worst debate I had ever seen. In fact, it wasn't even a debate. It was a disgrace. And it's primarily because of President Trump, who spent the entire time interrupting, not abiding by the rules that he agreed to, lying, maliciously attacking the son of the vice president. When asked to condemn white supremacists, he brought up the name of a neo-fascist far-right group and said, stand back and stand by. We'll talk about who won the debate, who lost the debate, but I can tell you one thing for sure. The American people lost tonight, because that was horrific.
You just took the words out of my mouth. You used some high-minded language. I'm just going to say it like it is. That was a shit show. And, you know, we're in cable. We can say that. Apologies for being maybe a little bit crude, but that is really the phrase that I'm getting more, from people on both sides of the aisle on text. And it's the only phrase that I can think of to really describe it. And I couldn't agree with you more, Jake. The people who have been hurt the most by that are the people who are genuinely looking to see what each candidate stands for and who they should vote for. There are still people out there who haven't made up their mind either on which candidate to vote for or whether to vote. And I'm not sure that, particularly in the latter point, that performance and the theater there, the reality TV show, the bad reality TV show, is going to help them in the least.
Yeah, I mean, it was a complete disaster on all fronts. And I think if you came into this thinking that, 2 men in their 70s who want to be the leader of the free world for the next 4 years could have a reasonable exchange of ideas, you came away from this debate thinking that's not possible because you could hardly even hear them at certain points. There was so much crosstalk one.
Yeah, well, who was making all the fucking noise?
We should be really clear here. This is not both sides type of situation. There was one party on that stage interrupting, yelling over the moderator, and from the very beginning, I think what was so striking to watch was that usually these debates build and they build and they build to the end. We started at a 12 on a scale from 1 to 10. The president was really, I think in a very agitated state very early on in the debate, and the tone was set from that.
And can I say, I've heard already from people who very much support the president, want him to do well, as this was going on, that he was way too hot. They knew that he was going to be aggressive. They knew, as we talked about beforehand, that he was going to try to be on offense as much as possible. But this took it too far, even for Donald Trump.
And think about it if you're an undecided voter, right?
Yeah.
And you don't like the president's style, but you like some of his policies, okay? And you come in tonight, and the president, I don't know if Joe Biden won the debate per se. He had some nice moments, but I thought he was kind of flat. But that's almost irrelevant, because the way the president behaved, again, the Anti-Defamation League is already out there asking the president to clarify why he didn't condemn white supremacists and why he told this far-right neo-fascist group, stand back and stand by. The way that the president behaved on the debate stage is the way that the president has behaved in American politics. Yes, he's dominant, and if you like that, great. But he was rude, he didn't abide by any standards of decorum or decency. It was really, frankly, embarrassing. And just to clarify something, when I said it was almost entirely Trump, I wasn't talking about Joe Biden as the part that I was unsure about. I was talking about the moderator who did not have control of the debate stage.
Yeah, they were fucking him off.
Who didn't remind the president that he was violating the rules till 1 hour and 13 minutes into the debate.
Look, the whole thing was disgraceful. The whole thing was disgraceful. And when you talk about the fact that, that the president took it to a new low, there was one part in particular, it's hard to pick out because there were a lot of lows, that was really unbelievable, which is when Joe Biden was talking about his son, who died, who he was incredibly close to, but talking about him in the context of being a war hero and somebody who was in the military. And what did the president do? He shot at him about his son who was living as a drug addict. And that was a moment, I'm told, that Joe Biden didn't prepare for. He was trying to pivot away from the talk about his family. But in that moment, he turned to the camera and said, you know what, my son did have drug issues, like many of you out there. And that wasn't something, and we talked about this, we were watching, that he talks about very much. And that was a moment where Joe Biden was able to shine as the president was incredibly low, much lower than even his people.
Well, look, there are political attacks, and then there are things that completely lack decency. And I think in that moment it was obvious the president was trying to shoehorn a political attack against one son while Biden was talking about another son who served in the military honorably and died. And I think that comes across. I mean, the American people are not stupid, but it also just goes to show another thing that seemed very clear to me, really from the beginning, was just the lack of control that the president had over his own strategy, over, the plan that he had going into this. What did he want the American people to take away from this? You could not tell.
You called him a clown.
Instances, you couldn't even understand what he was trying to say because he was yelling over people.
And one final thought before we throw to Anderson. At the end there, when Chris Wallace was pressing the president ably on the idea of would he concede if he loses, Joe Biden said, yes, of course I will. The president wouldn't. And what occurred to me is the thought that the president does not think he's going to win this election, and he wants to bring the rest of us down with him. Anderson?
Jake, thank you very much. David Axelrod, I don't think we've ever seen a president of the United States completely lacking in shame, just shameless, and obesely immoral. There's not a moral fiber in this man. I don't know what came out of this debate. I don't know what side won. I don't know what voters want, but you cannot have watched that debate, I would think, and be proud of our president, the way he thinks of us as viewers, as Americans who are trying to decide about the future of the country. Can anybody come away from that debate knowing what Donald Trump wants for the next 4 years?
Does any of this surprise you?
No, but to see it on
the guy who was on that
display
stage,
in this
the
moment-
guy who was on that stage tonight is the guy we've seen for 4 years. Rick Santorum predicted what he would do. The question is, Rick, whether he over-torqued it and went overboard. I would say way overboard, and I don't think that he is going to profit from this. I think Donald Trump may have ended his presidency tonight with his performance. It's not that bad, it was great. But
Look, I thought the president was going to come out hot, and he did. I predicted, and he did come out hot.
No, but it's not even funny. I mean, are you actually proud of the president of the United States?
I think the president overplayed his hand tonight. Look, here's what I saw on stage tonight. What I saw was a president who, and you can just hear it by him reciting the things that have happened to him throughout the presidency. This Durham report, all the things that are going on. He feels like he has been mistreated and by the prior administration.
All narcissists and all psychopaths
I'm just
feel
telling
that,
you,
but it's not. Doesn't that make it true?
I'm just saying that this is a president who came out hot, and because he's feeling aggrieved. And I'm just telling you, and he felt like this is his opportunity to sort of turn the tables on them and sort of turn it on to Joe Biden, sort of give Biden the grief that he's been given over the last 4 years. I don't think it worked for him tonight. I mean, to answer it correctly, I think he came out way too hot. I don't think Biden particularly did a great job, to be honest with you, but I think that was overshadowed by the fact that Trump just was overdoing it.
Well, it was, here you had a president playing victim when 200,000 plus people have died from COVID. We know this is a president full of grievance, but tonight he took the presidency and the office of the presidency to a new low. The American people who have suffered for the last 6 months plus with this pandemic deserved a better debate and better explanations from the President of the United States. And what I heard from him was contemptible, was out of control, was almost monstrous at points when he was talking about Hunter Biden on a personal level, when he refused to denounce white supremacy.
It said stand by.
Stand by. What was that? He is so full of grievance that he can't get past himself. And, if he was looking to change the minds of any women voters out there, I think a lot of women would look at this and be frightened by it.
I want to say a couple of things. First of all, Jake said that this was a circus. Circus workers actually reached out to my team. They say, actually, we take offense. We are careful and respectful people, and we work very carefully together. So, circus workers are taking offense that this is worse than a circus, number one. Number two, only 3 things happened for me tonight. Number one, Donald Trump refused to condemn white supremacy. Number two, the President of the United States refused to condemn white supremacy. Number 3, the Commander-in-Chief refused to condemn white supremacy on the global stage in front of my children, in front of everybody's families, and he was given the opportunity multiple times to condemn white supremacy, and he gave a wink and a nod to a racist, Nazi, murderous organization that is now celebrating online, that is now saying we have a go-ahead. Look at what look at what the Proud Boys are doing right now online because the President of the United States refused to condemn white supremacy. That's the only thing that happened tonight. That's what happened tonight.
The only thing that I would say in response to you, Van, is what about this surprises you? This is exactly what he's done throughout. He's been asked these questions before. The only difference is he was asked about it at a presidential debate. This is how he's led. And, Joe Biden, I thought Joe Biden did fine tonight. He hung in there. It was like riding a bucking bronco. But it strikes me that and he showed his fundamental decency, which I think is what people are yearning for right now, in contrast to this president. But it strikes me that everybody was critical of Biden during those months when he was relatively quiet, and he gained during those months. And I think the same thing happened tonight. I think the time that he didn't get to speak because the president was interrupting him was time that actually worked for Biden because of the way Trump debated himself.
Other debates? Should there be? I mean, there's supposed to be, the vice presidential debate is next. And then, and then there's supposed to be 2 more presidential debates.
I must say, I don't think the country's going to be yearning for another one of these. I think that Biden has a decision to make. You know what'll happen if he says, I don't want to, I'm not going to dignify this with another debate, that the president will attack him for running away from debates. But I'm not sure the country will feel that way, having watched this spectacle.
As a clinical matter, Trump had stuff he had to do tonight. And he just failed across the board. Trump had to figure out a way to get women back on board with him. That kind of kindergarten level behavior is not going to attract female voters. He's trying to allegedly grow this Republican Party to include, African Americans. He just put out something this weekend saying he's going to reach out to African Americans on the economy. Didn't even speak about it. Didn't even talk about it. Had an opportunity to brag on his black record. Instead, talked about Portland, and then won't condemn white supremacy. So, if this is a clinical matter, I'm upset. And everybody knows either disgusted, sad, or angry. I don't know a single person, even my Republican friends are disgusted. But it's worse than that. Just as a clinical matter, I don't know what he was doing up there. But there's not a single thing he needed to do tonight that he did, except for, offend a lot of people, including Republicans, who are embarrassed tonight by the President of the United States.
And he was a total bully. I mean, he wasn't paying attention to his own rules. That his people agreed to. And the thing is that what Biden did, I think, effectively was sometimes do these throwaway lines where he said, well, it's hard to get a word in with this clown, or just shut up. At some point, he was so frustrated.
No, I think Biden missed, Rick, a lot of opportunities to, interrupt the president. If you notice, there were a couple of times when Biden did interrupt the president, and it actually threw the president off, and those were real missed opportunities. But perhaps one of the other things the president did is, by being the person he is, we're talking about how he did, as opposed to, Biden just standing there ends up looking better than anybody.
Yeah, I thought there were a couple of moments that Biden actually did poorly when he talked about not giving an answer on packing the court. I thought that was an incredibly bad moment for Joe Biden, not to basically come out and say, no, I'm not going to do those things. But it was just, it was lost in the cacophony of this debate. And it was really interesting, though. I know, because he did come out hot, and I don't think Chris Wallace. I understand Jake said he didn't step in. I think Chris Wallace was overwhelmed by again, you're in there in the moment, and you're just trying to. You don't expect this, and. I thought Wallace actually did a pretty good job shutting him down. I think he was very helpful to Joe Biden on many, many occasions in shutting the president down. And by the end, even before he said, it's 2 minutes and you agreed to it, the president, at least from what I saw, had calmed down. And we actually, the last half hour or so, was somewhat of a reasonable debate. But I think at that point, it was, the die was cast. And I think that the president got hurt tonight.
How about when they were talking at the end about the potential for rigged election? And the president was, I'm going to use the word again, threatening when he talked about the election. He said, this is not going to end well. What does that mean to the American public? That if you go and either you vote in person or you vote by mail, that something is going to happen? What is going to happen? Was he predicting violence in the country?
I don't think that's fair. I think that's taking it too far. What I think what the president is saying is,
you can have it in the same debate where he told white supremacists.
Right, if you're talking about a fascist armed group to stand down and stand by, listen, I'm talking about poll watchers going in.
Telling them that, but I think what he was, he did not answer the question directly, and he should have, and it was wrong, and I have no idea why he didn't. He's done it before.
He did. He actually did answer the question directly by his silence. He knows exactly
he has condemned white supremacist group before. Why he didn't do it when directly asked that, I have no idea, and it was a huge mistake.
I don't know, Rick. When he was asked about the young man who shot the people in Kenosha, he defended the young man. He refused to condemn the group that came into Portland by a caravan. He has given aid and comfort to these groups because he feels that they're on his side. And all you need is to be on Donald Trump's side, and he'll be on your side.
Here's a larger QAnon conspiracy theorist.
Right, exactly.
Because he believes that they are on his side. That it's the first thing on record he said
about QAnon conspiracy theorists who, by the way, are trafficking in age-old anti-Semitic, anti-Catholic stereotypes about, Democrats and Hollywood celebrities drinking the blood of children.
Yeah.
I mean, these are like blood libel, old Nazi things. He said, I hear they say very nice things about
Yes,
me.
and that's all it takes. But here's the thing about Donald Trump. And this was part of why he got elected in a way, but he is someone who has spent his life and he spent his presidency basically sundering rules, laws, norms, and institutions. And so is it surprising that in this, the most important debate of his life, that he sundered the rules and trampled over the rules in this debate? What you saw tonight was the reason that Donald Trump's has the problems that he has, and it has much to do with who he is as a person as any of his positions. Although those are areas of vulnerability as well.
Let's say a couple things about Biden. First of all, there were a lot of people on the left and the right who weren't sure if Biden had enough gas in the tank to get through the night. Those questions have been put to bed. He was able to stand and deliver and to deal with all the harassment and all the bullying, and he stood there. So to the extent
He certainly wasn't a powerful figure on stage.
But at the end of the debate, you felt he was a decent human being, which cannot be said of the President of the United States.
And so again, listen, I just want to call this stuff fair based on what we were saying before and where we are now. So there was concern. Can Biden take it? Can he make it? Can he deal with the body blows? Is he going to fall apart? Biden did not fall apart. That is a significant development. Nobody's ever going to put that against him again. So Trump was wrong saying all this stuff about him. The other thing I think about Biden, Biden did get asked the tough question around the law and order and that kind of stuff. And when he was pressed, he said, I'm for the rule of law. I'm for it. Both times when Trump got tough questions, whether it's about are you going to honor the election results or are you going to condemn white supremacy, he couldn't do it, he wouldn't do it, he didn't do it. So if you're looking for peace, stability, packing court, he does. He does.
And that's a big one.
He does.
That's a huge issue.
So what? He does. But if you're looking for peace, stability, how do you get back to you've got to compare the performances here because besides all the other stuff, and Biden answered the tough questions more than he didn't, and Trump ducked.
Yeah, let's go back to Wolf.
Anderson, people are watching this debate around the world here on CNN in more than 200 countries and territories. Clearly, this debate was an embarrassment for the United States of America, a clear embarrassment. I want to bring in CNN's fact checker, Daniel Dale, who's been very busy tonight scrutinizing everything we heard from both candidates. And Daniel, first, the big picture. How much was fact? How much was false?
Well, it depended, Wolf, on who we were listening to. I think it's important for us as journalists to say when both sides are not alike. And they were not alike tonight. We had an avalanche of lying from President Trump. Biden, conversely, made at least a couple false or misleading claims, but honestly, he was largely accurate. There were times during this debate, Wolf, where President Trump's every line, specifically on mail voting, almost every single thing he said during that concluding section of the debate was inaccurate. And the other thing that stood out to me, Wolf, was that these are largely false claims the president has made before. These weren't one-time slips or gaffes or errors. These have been fact-checked, and he keeps saying them, and they're still wrong.
Let's turn to a specific claim that was made by President Trump about former Vice President Biden's health care plan. Listen to this.
The bigger problem that you have is that you're going to extinguish 180 million people with their private health care, that they're very
That's
happy
simply
with.
not true.
Well, you said you're going to socialist. I'm going to socialist.
All right, Daniel, break that down for us.
Biden was correct. That claim is simply not true. You may recall the Democratic primary in which a leading candidate, Senator Bernie Sanders, proposed a Medicare for all plan, a single-payer plan that would indeed have eliminated most private insurance, about 100 million people with private plans. Biden rejected that approach. What Biden is proposing is something called a public option that allows people to voluntarily, if they want, enter into a Medicare-like program. But if they want to keep their own insurance, they can. So bottom line, this claim is just inaccurate.
Let's turn, Daniel, to the economy. President Trump's claim about manufacturing jobs created on his watch. Listen to this.
They said it would take a miracle to bring back manufacturing. I brought back 700,000 jobs. They brought back nothing. They gave up on manufacturing.
We did not agree.
Standard fare.
Daniel, how do you rate that claim?
So everything about that claim, Wolf, is inaccurate. First of all, from the beginning of Trump's presidency through August, it's a net loss of 237,000 jobs. We have lost manufacturing jobs under Trump. Now, if you would like to be generous to the president and just go to the pre-pandemic crash period, it's a gain of 483,000. So that would be pretty good, if not for the pandemic, but the president was still adding more than 200,000 extra jobs. In addition, there were manufacturing jobs lost under Obama, but that was largely because he inherited a recession when he took office in which a steep decline was underway. That turned around in March 2010. From then on, there was a slow but steady increase in manufacturing jobs until Trump took office. Wolf?
All right, Daniel, you're going to be back every 10 minutes doing more fact-checking, critically important. We're all also waiting for the first results of our instant poll to get reaction from people who are actually watching this debate. Jake, what a debate.
Oregon Biden won easy.
Let's go back to Anderson.
So as people say.
Well, thanks very much. We're going to get a reaction from people who are watching the debate, I think undecided voters. But Ben, you were saying among white supremacists online, the reaction has been overwhelming. They're very happy. I mean, they feel like they've been given a green light. Now, I don't know what the president meant when he said it, but when he said stand by, well, I think we all know what he meant.
I just think he was saying he was going to get back to it.
On that one, I think you just might want to let it fall on his face on that one. So it's shocking. My heart breaks when you were saying that, why should we be surprised? I just don't want for it to become something that people are not surprised by. I have a friend whose son was watching this on the West Coast, turns to his mom, to the mother, and asks, "Should we buy a gun to protect ourselves?" Yeah, well, gun sales are, stay with me because there are young people across the country, this is the only America that they know. They're growing up in a country where they can't go to school because somebody has mishandled this virus so badly, and then that person comes on television and says something so terrifying to them that they ask their mom, should we buy a gun? That's where we are, okay? That's where we are. And the country deserves better than that. I think everybody knows I'm as bipartisan as you can get. But this has nothing to do anymore. We are beyond the partisan. We are beyond politics. We are in a moral swamp of misbehavior that we wouldn't tolerate from our children in a kindergarten class. And so there's a bunch of stuff I want to work through in terms of what actually happened. But this is not a normal night. This cannot become a normal night when the President of the United States.
I don't think the problem, it isn't a normal night. It is normal for this president.
Yeah.
And that is the point. And what he did tonight, this was Trump's greatest hits. I mean, it was all there. The conspiracy theories, the divisiveness, the inhumanity. It was all there for everyone to see. This is who he is. That's who came. That's what people saw. It will probably thrill some of his supporters, but it will, I predict, have turned off a lot of other people. And as I said earlier, I think, he put a sorry end to a sorry saga with his performance tonight.
I just think it's such a low moment in American presidential history that you see an incumbent president of the United States bullying his opponent, behaving in a shameful way, and, declining to say how he felt about white supremacy. I mean, give me a break. And then declining, he was asked specifically, would you tell your supporters not to be violent after this election? And he declined to do that. So when I say frightening, and I don't know whether this is what your friend is referring to, but when you say frightening, that's what I think Americans are looking at and saying, wait a minute, this is not the way democracy is supposed to be. And so I don't see support Donald Trump, don't support Donald Trump, whatever. I don't see how you defend that behavior, Rick. That's what I'm talking about, the behavior that I guess we've come to expect, David, but to me, it was sort of a crescendo tonight.
Yeah, I would say the Democrats owe a lot to Chris Wallace because Chris Wallace asked those two questions, not Joe Biden. It was Chris Wallace who asked those two questions. And he asked them for a reason because he asked two questions where he was asking the president to do something that he knows the president doesn't like to do.
Which is?
Which is say something bad about people who support him. right?
What, declining violence?
Well, talking about
This is white supremacy.
yeah, the white supremacists, number one, and number two, asking a question about whether he knows the president doesn't think this election's fair. So he thinks that the president believes that there's these not the absentee voting, which happens in Pennsylvania. So there's no vote fraud, and the president's not going to happen in Pennsylvania. But in these states that mail ballots to you without requesting them, that's where he's focused his attention, and he thinks that's unfair. He thinks it's rampant for fraud. And so he asked him those two things, and he knows the president is not going to agree with him, not going to push back harder. And he fell into it. Look, the president made two, in my opinion, those two gaffes, and they're worse than gaffes, really hurting tonight. In addition to the tone, and the thing that really hurt Joe Biden tonight, that if I was the Republicans, I'd be focusing all my attention on, is the fact that he did not say he wouldn't pack the court.
Yeah, man, I think in comparison to what happened on the other side, that's the only rule you can.
I don't think it's. I think it's a big issue. I mean, it's a very, very big issue.
It's an important issue. It's an important issue. You know what else is an important issue? COVID-19 is an important issue. And to hear the President of the United States, sort of dismiss his experts on fundamental questions of public health policy.
Yeah, I think the president did a much better job on that than you guys think. And the reason is and the president brought this up, and that is, look, there is a cost of health, of quality of life, of a whole host of other things, of shutting down this economy. And I think he did a very good job of painting Joe Biden as someone who's gonna create, look, addiction is up, suicide is up, overdoses is up. I mean, you've got lots of really bad domestic violence, way up. All of these things are happening, and we just ignore that because we're looking at how many people died, and we're not looking at how many people are suffering because of it. And that's why I think the president did a good job.
The trap that Biden fell into on that question, and I agree with you, is that he should have said, I want to open this up. Trump wants to open up the wrong way. I want to open up the right way.
No, you're right. He
He
should have said that on that point. The bottom line is right now, the country's in the throes of this health crisis. The vaccine and how that's treated is a very, very sensitive thing. I think that Trump, right to the point where he dismissed as fake news, some of the criticisms of his handling of this thing. I think it was just, again, it was him sort of reflexively responding to this. And I think it's dangerous. I think it is dangerous when you undermine your own people. He dismissed the FBI director. He dismissed his CDC director. When it's inconvenient for him, he dismissed it on very fundamental issues of public policy.
And conservative. I'm speaking for conservatives here because then I hear this over and over again that the media is focused on one health crisis, and there are other health crises.
Well, you can't solve the one without the other. The reason that people were isolated was because we didn't have a handle on this, and the president pushed the country back into opening up at a pace that now we see waves coming again, and he continues to do that. He continues to do that. Ridiculed Biden tonight on masks.
And also manipulated scientists, pressured the CDC to not be so tough on their guidelines, or what he said was too tough on their guidelines for how to safely open up schools. I mean,
But I was just going to say, I totally agree with you, and I think Biden tried to make that point and didn't make it as well.
He didn't make it at all.
But if you remember back to the debate, if you try, or maybe you want to forget it, that Donald Trump interrupted a debate section about the pandemic to insult Joe Biden's intelligence, sort of out of nowhere, and where he went to college. It sort of came out of the blue and started saying, you're not smart. And in the middle of a discussion on the pandemic, where did that come from?
You've been saying for 4 years, because I've sat across from you for 4 years, you've been talking about this element of Donald Trump and this kind of destructive impulse of his to lash out in ways that are just, I got a text from the grandfather of a 12-year-old, to your point, not an African-American kid, but we just had to talk Will down off a rage spiral for
from watching that. This is from the kid's mother, his first ever debate, and that's what he got to witness. Shit show doesn't even begin to describe it.
And by the way, that racist group is now using "stand back, stand by" as a new slogan. So that's look. I just want to say just a couple more things. Just Biden had, I think, an opportunity, and I think he did usually well. We could have done better. First of all, thank goodness climate change was mentioned. That's a positive thing. Trump says he should break the forest laws. What Trump didn't take responsibility for, and what Biden should nail him on, those are federal forests that are burning in California. These are federal forests that are burning in California. I got a bunch of friends in California who are breathing a lot of smoke because of what is now rampant climate change. I'm glad it was addressed. I was sad to hear President Trump talk about it the way that he did. I think the other thing that I think Biden does get some credit for is that the way he chose to conduct himself. There were 3 different conversations that were happening. One was a conversation between Trump and Chris Wallace. That was its own thing, which was ugly and difficult. There was a conversation happening between Trump and Biden. That was mixed, and sometimes Biden did well, sometimes he didn't. Trump was always terrible. But there was another conversation, and it was Biden and the American people. And I really thought he did a good job to turning over and over again and speaking heart to heart to the American people. That was effective for Joe Biden.
He won it easy.
Let's get some from Joe Biden's running mate. We're joined now by the Democratic vice presidential nominee, Senator Kamala Harris, Democrat of California. It doesn't sound like she's actually plugged in yet. She's ready? Well, hold on one second. We're going to go to her in 1 second. But in the meantime, Dana Bash.
Well, she hates that Trump, this bitch.
We're all getting text messages from friends all over the country. A friend of mine in Kansas City watching her first debate with her 6th grade daughter bursts into tears, has to run to bed because she was so appalled, the 6th grade girl, at what she saw from the president of the United States. We all want to dive into the substance, but it's almost difficult to get there.
Because you almost couldn't actually hear or listen to what they were trying to say, and frankly, when Joe Biden tried to talk, what he was trying to say, because Donald Trump kept interrupting him. And even when Chris Wallace, the few times he tried to get in there, he didn't have any luck. It wasn't until sort of towards the end of the debate that he finally called out Donald Trump for interrupting so much. So we would love to be talking about the substance right now, but it's unclear how much there was. There was a little bit on the important issues like COVID and some discussion about masks, but again, it was very hard to actually absorb that through the chaos that Donald Trump was creating.
Quick thoughts.
The dichotomy tonight was so clear when you saw the president arguing with the moderator constantly, and then at certain points, Biden just turning to the camera and speaking to the American public. And I think it was a very clear contrast in how they were each approaching this debate and what they were trying to get out of it. And, ultimately at the end of the day, if you could hear something at the end of the day, you may have only heard one side of this because the president kept sort of working the refs on this rather than speaking to the American public, who he's asking for 4 more years in office.
So now I think we have Senator Kamala Harris plugged in ready for us. Senator Harris, are you there?
I'm here, Jake. Can you hear me?
Oh, I can.
Can you see me?
Yes, I can. And thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. So, very simple question. After what went down this evening, do you think Joe Biden should participate in a 2nd or 3rd debate?
Joe Biden is never going to refuse to talk to the American people and have any opportunity that he can to speak directly to American families and speak about the issues, speak the truth, and address the facts of where we are now, but also address the hopes and dreams of the American family in terms of where we can be. And Joe's got a plan for dealing with those hopes and those aspirations as well.
Do you think the American people benefited from what we all saw this evening?
I think the American people benefited from a very clear contrast. On the one hand, you had Joe talking directly into the camera, trying to bring some semblance of maturity to a conversation with a country that is in the midst of at least 3 major crises of a proportion we have not experienced in generations: a public health pandemic, an economic crisis being measured against the Great Depression, and of course a climate crisis, and then a reckoning on race in this country. And Joe was trying to have a mature conversation about how we need to address these issues. And then on the other hand, you had a Donald Trump who spent full time interrupting, bullying the moderator, and lying to the American people. And so I do believe that the American people benefited from a clear contrast of what they've got right now, but also what they can get, and what is possible. And Joe, I think, made it clear that what is possible will be achieved when everyone votes.
I have to get your reaction to something that President Trump said that has alarmed the Anti-Defamation League. When he was asked to condemn white supremacists, he didn't. He said he could, but he didn't do it. And then he raised the group, the Proud Boys, which is a far-right neo-fascist group, and told them to stand back and stand by. Stand back and stand by. And according to media reports, members of that group, which are blamed for a lot of violence in a lot of cities, are rejoicing about this. What was your response when you heard that?
I heard what we all heard. The President of the United States, in the year of our Lord 2020, refuses to condemn white supremacists. And not only that, in addition, has created a number of policies, apparently with pride, including the most recent that was discussed on the debate stage, which is to end the training on the issue of race and what we must do to avoid prejudice and bias based on race and based on gender, sexual orientation, and a number of issues. This is a president, people talk about, is he dog whistling? Dog whistling through a bullhorn is what he's doing. And, by contrast, again, you have a Joe Biden who is not afraid to speak the phrase Black Lives Matter. A Joe Biden who says we need to deal with this, we need to speak truth about it, and we need to do it with the spirit of healing and unifying our country. And again, Jake, contrast so clear. On the one hand, Donald Trump continuously throughout his campaign for president, throughout his presidency, spending full time trying to sow hate and division, trying to get the American people to turn on each other. And on the other hand, a Joe Biden who speaks with a calm voice, respecting the dignity of all people, recognizing the kind of division that has taken place in our country because of Donald Trump, and there with a genuine goal of unifying our country once, God willing, he wins this election.
There are a number of Democrats in Washington, as you know, who are saying that if Judge Barrett is confirmed, and if you and Joe Biden win and the Democrats take back the Senate, then there should be consideration of adding seats to the U.S. Supreme Court. Neither you nor Joe Biden are willing to give a straight answer as to whether or not you're willing to entertain that idea, but it's not some fringe idea. Democrats in Washington are talking about it. Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leader in the Senate, has said that he's not taking anything off the table. Is that an idea that you're willing to think about?
We are 35 days away from an election that is probably the most important election of our lifetime and our children's lifetime. And there is nothing about these next 35 days that Joe or I will take for granted. And so the focus right now is on reminding people that we have this election that is very much in play. It is about reminding people that people are voting right now. Almost 1 million people, Jake, in our country have already voted. We are in the midst of an election, and the Republican leader of the Senate, together with Donald Trump, are in the spirit of hypocrisy, trying to push through a nominee while the American people are voting. And so Joe has been really clear. Let's focus on what's happening right now. Deal with later. Focus on what's happening right now, which is the American people are voting, and they should be the ones to decide who will have the next lifetime appointment to the United States Supreme Court. Let's not get distracted. Let's be focused on what is right in front of us, because there is a lot at stake in terms of the integrity of our democracy, of our election system, and this process that should take place over the next 35 days.
I will respectfully note that you also declined to answer that question with me. Senator Kamala Harris, I appreciate your time this evening. Thank you so much.
Good to be with you, Jake. Thanks for the question.
All right, yeah. So I don't really understand, Abby, why they won't answer that question. I guess they just feel like Well, yeah, I guess.
I understand why they
Why
won't
don't you explain to the American people?
They don't answer that question because this is sort of like the Medicare for all of the general election, which is that there is an idea that is being talked about on the left of their party, and they want to stay in the middle.
Yeah.
That's why they won't answer the question. But, I mean, it should not be anything new. I mean, this is something Joe Biden has avoided talking about since the primaries. But I also think we should be very clear here. The idea of packing the courts is not some sort of widely held Democratic idea. There are people talking about it, many of them on the internet.
Yeah.
But when you really look at how Democrats feel about this issue, this is not something that a majority of Democrats.
And that was one of the more memorable moments that Joe Biden had on this issue in the debate, when he said, Democratic Party is me. I am the Democratic Party. That was obviously something that he practiced, and he delivered. And because the Biden campaign understood that Donald Trump was going to go after him as being a socialist, as somebody who is just a puppet of the left of his party, and so he wanted to try to kind of, put a stake through the heart of that argument. Unclear if he did it, but he certainly had a memorable line to try to back.
I do have to say that I know we all want to talk about the substance of this stuff, but when you have the President of the United States telling a far-right neo-fascist group, stand back and stand by, when you have the President of the United States basically threatening to take the entire country down with him if he loses the election, talking about whether or not Joe Biden has a position on adding justices to the Supreme Court, does seem a little off point. Let's go back to Wolf now.
Thanks very much. I want to go back to our fact checker, Daniel Dale. Daniel, the president renewed his attack on mail-in balloting and an unproven allegation, a lot of unproven allegations he made of voter fraud. Listen to what he said about unsolicited ballots.
A solicited ballot, okay, solicited is okay. You're soliciting, you're asking, they send it back, you send it back. I did that. If you have an unsolicited, they're sending millions of ballots all over the country. There's fraud.
All right, Daniel, how do you rate that statement?
That is false, Wolf. Look, there is just no evidence.
He hasn't said too much that's true, is he?
Any form of mail voting, whether we're talking about cases in which people have to request a ballot or states in which all registered voters or all eligible registered voters are sent ballots.
I think everyone's saying what he's sort of fucking
states
scumbag he is
are
today.
sending out these so-called unsolicited ballots during this election. About half of them are doing so because of the pandemic, but about half of them, including Republican-leaning Utah, did so before the pandemic with no significant incidents of fraud. So again, bottom line, with any form of mail-in voting, voter fraud, any kind of election fraud is exceedingly rare, Wolf.
Certainly is. Daniel, Joe Biden, he pushed back at the president's defense of mail-in voting in Republican-run states while slamming it in Democratic-controlled states. Let's listen to that and how the president responded.
Why is it for them somehow not fraudulent? It's the same process. It's honest. No one has established at all that there is fraud related to mail-in ballots. That somehow it's a fraudulent process.
It's already been established. Take a look at Carolyn Maloney's race.
You had an opportunity to
Look at
respond.
Carolyn Maloney. They have no idea what happened.
What do you make of that, Daniel?
Wolf, that is also false. There is no evidence of fraud in Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney's race in New York's 12th district. Now, there were issues in that race. There were a significant number of ballots rejected for reasons like missing or flawed signatures. There was also a legal dispute about the number of rejected ballots. Some ballots were sent out late to voters. But even Maloney's defeated opponent, Suraj Patel, tweeted tonight that he said Trump lied about this. He lied about what happened, and Trump has done so repeatedly. So bottom line, no evidence of fraud in the 12th district primary. And I need to add, Wolf, that literally almost every single thing President Trump said tonight, almost every single example he cited about mail voting was wrong. So he cited a case in which he said a West Virginia mailman was selling ballots. There was no mailman selling ballots. That man was caught altering primary ballot applications, he said as a joke, from Democrat to Republican. He told a story about what happened in one county in North Carolina, but got it wrong. He told a story about something that allegedly happened in Philly today or this week, but he got that wrong. You can look up the local media coverage. He told a story about ballots found discarded in Pennsylvania, but got the number of Trump ballots there wrong. So literally everything the president says on this subject needs to be treated with great skepticism, Wolf.
Excellent work, Daniel. You're going to be back in about 15 minutes with more fact-checking. Anderson, I will tell you who was very pleased with tonight's debate. That would be America's adversaries, whether Russia or China or Iran. They've been trying to sow political dissent, create chaos here in the United States, political chaos. Clearly, we saw that unfold tonight. It was very, very apparent the U.S. intelligence community has been suggesting this has been their goal for a long time. And I must say, from their perspective, U.S. adversaries, mission accomplished.
Same with white supremacists in the United States and globally, neo-fascist groups all around the country, all around the world as well. Both President Trump and former Vice President Biden were hoping to win over undecided voters in the debate tonight. We have a group of undecided voters in the battleground state of Ohio. They've been watching the debate. Ana Cabrera is with them in Westerville, outside of Columbus. Ana, the debate often, well, kind of started off the rails and just stayed off the rails, with the president interrupting former Vice President Biden frequently, both of them trading personal insults. How did the undecided voters react?
Well, we are with 14 undecided voters, and we saw a lot of grunts, we saw head shaking, we saw eye rolling, especially in those moments of large interruptions and a little bit of the back and forth. Let me ask a couple of our voters here how they feel about it, because I know, Jacqueline, you said this was a very exhausting debate for you. What did you think about all the
Exhausting.
I just thought it was exhausting. It was like two people, children fighting. I came here to really try and learn and have an open mind and try and decide who I really wanted to vote for and hear their opinions rather than what social media has to say. And I just felt like I was just watching two people argue and talk over one another.
You said it was what you expected.
Absolutely. It's American political theater at its finest. We only get to see this every 4 years for a couple times. I think 3 debates this time. I was glad to see Joe Biden showed up, just like he did when he debated Paul Ryan for vice president. Trump had a good command of things, so it was nice to see. I think we have a real battle here.
Maria, did the interrupting make you feel more strongly or less strongly toward one of the candidates?
Well, it's so distracting that I just found that I was agreeing with a lot of what President Trump was saying, but it's not what he says, it's how he says it, and it's so distracting, and he's saying it when he's not supposed to be saying it, that I'm finding myself being swayed against him, not toward him, even though I believe in what he's saying.
Fucking hell, what an
Kevin,
idiot.
you said this was a train wreck tonight.
Train wreck disaster, yeah.
Explain why. You mentioned you actually voted for Trump in 2016. You did not like what you heard.
No, I wasn't pleased with it at all. The whole interrupting started with him. President Trump was very childish. I was also disappointed that Joe Biden got drawn in. But I can also understand how difficult it would be not to, when you're hearing, that kind of stuff, crazy stuff about his family that's so clearly not true. How are you going to leave that unspoken and not say anything against it? So I get it, but it was too bad.
But did it bother you at all to hear Joe Biden calling the sitting president of the United States names, calling him a clown and that type of thing?
I think we pretty much have gotten past that now, haven't we? I mean, he spent the last 5 years calling Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas and, talking about AOC and all the other people. And, so is it great that Joe called him a clown? No, but when the shoe fits. When the clown shoe fits.
Walk with me down here, guys. Make sure we get a sampling on the other side of our group here. You were laughing at a lot of those moments where other people were shaking their head. What was going through your mind?
Again, he's our commander-in-chief, and if you're in a debate, people want to, be respected and called as such. Calling him a clown is just out of pocket, and I just don't agree with it.
I did this thing with every single one of these people here right before, or right after the debate, shortly before you came to me, and the number of people who called this debate frustrating, childish, a train wreck, exhausting was pretty much the entire group here. Nobody felt really good about what they heard tonight, and of course there were a few high moments. I'll toss it back to you so you can show us one of them.
Ana, there were some moments that resonated with undecided voters. We measured their reactions as the candidates spoke. Now, before we show you one of those moments, we should note at the bottom of your screen, men's responses will be in green, women in yellow.
When the lines go up, that means this group liked what it heard. If lines go down, that means the group didn't like a candidate's answer. Let's take a look at the moment that hit high marks with both men and women.
Show up and vote. You will determine the outcome of this election. Vote, vote, vote. If you're able to vote early in your state, vote early. If you're able to vote in person, vote in person. Vote whatever way is the best way for you. Because he cannot stop you from being able to determine the outcome of this election. And in terms of whether or not when the votes are counted, and they're all counted, that will be accepted. If I win, that will be accepted. If I lose, they'll be accepted.
Anna, why did that strike a chord, and did the voters you're with think that there was a clear winner tonight?
We'll answer the second question after we get the response to that moment, because obviously there were very few moments that were high for both men and women. That was one of the highest across the board. You felt very strongly. This will be your first election ever voting. Why was it such an important moment for you?
I think no matter what you stand for or who you stand for, it's important for these elections to go vote, because that is you saying what your stance is. And 40 years from now, I hope that me as a first-time voter, I can be proud of my first election and who I voted for, and I hope that can be the same for everyone else.
Why did you feel like you were really, really engaged in that moment with Joe Biden talking about voting?
It's so important. That's everyone's responsibility, living in the United States, is to vote, to go out and do that and let your voice be heard. And
yet it's such a, I guess, normal thing, right? It wasn't anything revelatory that they were speaking of, and yet in this election cycle, it seemed like it struck such a high note.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's just really important to get out there and everyone do their part so that we're, all of our voices are heard. And
okay, so these are undecided voters. I guess the big question here is, was there a clear winner from this group? And let me do a quick show of hands, if you will. Who in this group, raise your hand if you thought Joe Biden won the debate?
One
person, okay. Show of hands if you thought Donald Trump won the debate.
One.
And of course,
Two.
That doesn't necessarily mean that those people who are raising their hands
anyone who thinks that, they're fuckwits.
They're going to vote for. But as you can see, there was really no clear winner here in this group. A couple of people felt strongly one way or another, but the majority of this group tells me there was no winner tonight. Anderson?
Yeah, not a lot of hands being raised. Appreciate it. Thanks very much. Back now with our folks. It's always
that's how stupid the people are over there.
Through the
listen to that fucking Trump.
Well, and I think in a way you could say they saw it the way we've seen it around this table, which is that it was not an edifying debate, that Donald Trump did not behave as one would expect a president to behave. These are undecided voters, and they really couldn't decide. So I think it's probably not going to change the trajectory of this election very much. But it was sort of a stark viewing of this president's character that I know we've seen it for the last 3.5 years.
To the voters out there,
yeah,
that's baked into this.
Well,
There's nothing the president did that helped you, and it could have.
Wait,
It's more of a missed opportunity. It's more of a missed opportunity for Trump to show a different side than it was that this is fatal to him. We thought, how many times have we said, fatal? This is it. The election's over.
Possibly doesn't have another side.
But I said
that's it.
It didn't change it.
I wonder though, isn't the decision really like, how do you really want to spend the next 4 years? Do you want to spend it
exactly.
End or in that side?
Yeah. One of the things that was really interesting was the one woman who spoke, I think maybe first, who said, I kind of like some of the things he says, but I just don't like the way he behaves, and that means I probably can't vote for him. That is going to be the story in some ways of this election, and women
story the last 4 years.
Women have moved away from him and the Republican Party in big numbers. And what's really interesting is watching women without a college degree who voted for him by 23 points in 2016, and that was a major thing for him. He is now battling to win that group with Joe Biden. It is an even fight, and this is why. I mean, and in that, I think he did himself dramatic harm tonight.
I think so too. There's another group that he had in his pocket that has begun to move away from him. That's older voters, even older white voters. I don't think that older white voters, I don't mean to speak for groups that I don't spend a lot of time with, but I've met a few older white voters, I don't think they like stuff like that. I think they remember a time when decorum was a part of the deal. And to stand up there and do what he did, I just don't think that actually helps him. I just don't understand the political strategy. At the end of the day, what these guys are supposed to be doing is dividing their opposition and uniting their base. That's all politics is. Unite us, divide them. And what I saw Trump doing tonight was uniting us and dividing his own people. Right. Because I'm hearing from Republicans, I'm hearing from white women, I'm hearing from older voters that they don't like what they saw. But the white supremacists are very happy tonight.
Right. Can I say something about mothers also? So the moment that really stuck out to me was when Joe Biden was talking about Beau, and Beau having served in the military, and then the president turned that conversation to Hunter. Now we've heard the Hunter, you know, all the harangues about Hunter and Ukraine and all the rest of it, but then the president turned it to Hunter Biden's military service, being thrown out of the military because of cocaine, which Biden said, well, that's not true. But then Biden went back and talked to the camera and said, you know, families suffer from people who have drug addiction. I'm proud of my son for overcoming what he did. And you hear that, and I'm a mother. There are lots of mothers out there, and you know, you listen to that and you go, well, that's a father. Yeah. That's a good father.
He said, my son,
and I'm proud of him for overcoming it. It was a really important moment, I think.
Just add, we're going to have a very important take on who, if anyone, won tonight. We're standing by for the first results from CNN's exclusive instant poll of debate watchers. We're back after the break.
Air quality update in association with Copernicus.
You all
Europe's
right?
Eyes on Earth.
You want to wait and see the poll?
Yeah. How you from the win?
Eh?
How you from the win?
Oh, Biden won easy, I reckon. That Trump's a fucking arsehole. He did it on purpose today, to fuck it up. People too stupid to fucking realise it. I want someone to fucking shoot him. And solve the problem straight away. If you're going to take some photos soon.
Yeah, I will.
Air quality update in association with Copernicus. Europe's Eyes on Earth.
I'm David Cobra in Wuhan, China.
CNN Seoul.
Istanbul. And Athens, Greece. In Copenhagen, Denmark.
In London, and this is CNN.
What was that?
Are you going to watch the VP debate?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah, Chris, you want to empty that in the rubbish bin?
Yeah.
And put the plate in the fridge? But, yeah, whack it out in the fridge and put that in. Oh, you still got your orange juice in there?
Yeah.
Did you eat your chocolate?
No, I'm still in here.
Down the bottom, is there a room? No. Yeah. And the juice. Alright.
Yeah, just here.
Yeah, we'll see them next week.
Yeah.
Oh, she's pretty smart, this bitch. He's a fucking ass licker too, this prick. He's right up Trump's ass.
October 8.
Pence. Pence. Tuppence.
October 9 could be the day.
Presidential debate in history. We're checking the facts of what we heard. Former Vice President Biden tonight. Our fact checker Daniel Dale is back. So Daniel, let's listen to this exchange between the candidates about race and violence as Mr. Trump quoted a former Trump official.
By the way, you know, his own former spokesperson said, you know, riots and chaos and violence help his cause. That's what this is all about.
I don't know who said that.
I do.
Who?
I think Kellyanne Conway.
I don't think she said.
She said that.
Daniel, President said he didn't think she said that, did she?
She did indeed, Anderson. She didn't use those precise words, but Biden was accurately summarizing it. And what happened was Conway was asked in an August interview on Fox News about criticism of Trump from former candidate Pete Buttigieg, who blamed Trump for violent protests during Trump's presidency. Conway rejected that argument, and she cited a restaurant owner in Wisconsin who asked the violent protesters, "Are you trying to get Trump elected?" And then she said, quote here, Anderson, he knows, that restaurant owner, full stop, and I guess Mayor Pete knows, full stop, that the more chaos and anarchy and vandalism and violence reigns, the better news for the very clear choice on who's best on public safety and law and order. And she was clearly suggesting that clear choice was President Donald Trump, Anderson.
And to the economy, a claim by former Vice President Biden about President Trump's trade policy and the U.S. trade deficit with China.
His trade deals are the same way. He talks about these great trade deals. You know, he talks about the art of the deal. China's perfected the art of the steal. We have a higher deficit with China now than we did before.
Daniel?
Biden was slightly off here. He was wrong. Now, Biden would have been correct if he was talking last year, referring to the 2018 deficit, because in 2018, the U.S. trade deficit with China hit a record $380 billion. However, in 2019, amid Trump's trade war with China, the deficit declined significantly down to $308 billion. That was at least a couple billion lower than the deficit in Obama's last year in 2016. Now, I need to note that most economists say trade deficits are not the best way to measure the health of a trading relationship, but nonetheless, bottom line, Biden was inaccurate here.
All right, Daniel, thanks very much. Appreciate it. At this point, how does the race change?
I don't think it does, Anderson. I think that Trump needed to really change the dynamic tonight, and I think he just reinforced the dynamic. I think that Biden did what he needed to do. I don't think it was a stellar performance, but it was good enough, and he did evince his decency, and he hung in there during the 90 minutes, and that's really what he needed to do. But Trump, you know, I got the sense that Donald Trump is a guy who knows he's losing at some level, and I think he's angry about it. And I think he indulged his anger instead of doing what he needed to do tonight, which was to show a different side of himself, as Rick said. And I think he's going to pay a price.
Yeah, if I was a Republican elected official, if I was someone running for office right now, I'd be pretty mad at him. Mm-hmm. Because I think he allowed himself, to use the term, David, he indulged himself tonight to the detriment of what I think the woman who David quoted in Ohio said, you know, I liked a lot of the things he said, and to the point where Van and I very much disagree that I don't think this is a center-left country. I think this is a center-right country, and we can win as a center-right campaign, but we can't win with a center-right campaign when you have someone who is as caustic as what the president is in this debate. And I think a lot of Republicans are going to be very upset that we have a winning message. At least I believe we have a winning message, we have winning policies, we have a winning contrast. We have a candidate who I think did not do well in Joe Biden tonight, but that's overshadowed by the fact that Donald Trump's personality ran wild tonight. And I think Republicans are going to be hopefully communicating that to the president.
It's so strange, though, because he's known for being usually so restrained in his indulging his appetites and desires. One other thing, I really love hearing from those voters, because we can get in our heads and stuff like that, but those are actually undecided people in a really important state. And one person said, and I think it's really true, I wanted to learn something, and I couldn't learn. Yeah. So, the first results of our exclusive instant poll of debate watchers, do they think either candidate came out a winner? We'll hear more from our focus group of undecided Ohio voters, and any of them make up their minds tonight.
Well, how about doing it instead of talking about it?
Tech for freedom.
Do you feel that you owe your current mental health to this technology?
Tech for power.
My house, my rules.
Up at 2 after 1.
1 in the morning start.
2 o'clock, I think.
Oh.
I started late today.
Mm.
I know, in 5 minutes. I know, 20 minutes. 20 minutes. I reckon Biden won easy, that's my opinion. But I hate fucking Trump anyhow. No matter what comes out of his fucking mouth, I hate the bastard.
Yeah, I didn't think the floor would be that quick.
Yeah, well, yeah.
From what I did see, it does look good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting a new verdict on how tonight's off-the-rails Trump-Biden debate played with viewers. David Chillian is joining us once again with the first results of CNN's exclusive instant poll. So, David, who won?
I'm going to reveal that to you in just a moment, Wolf, but I just want to make clear for the audience, this is a poll of debate watchers. This is not a poll of the country at large. And in this sample of debate watchers, it was a slightly more Democratic audience, 39% Democratic, 36% Independent, 25% Republican. So we're seeing a slightly more Democratic audience in this group of debate watchers. And now I can reveal to you who won the debate tonight. Joe Biden hands down. 60% of debate watchers say Joe Biden won the debate. 28% say Donald Trump won the debate. And take a look at how this compares with expectations, Wolf. We asked these debate watchers going in, who do you think will win the debate? Well, for that, before debate, you see there it said 56% said Biden, 43% said Trump. But again, look where it ended up. 60% said Biden won the debate, 28% said Trump won. He significantly, the president, underperformed expectations of these debate watchers in this poll. We also asked who was more truthful in the debate. 65% say Joe Biden. Seems these debate watchers agree with Daniel Dale and his fact checks here. 29% say Donald Trump. And what about, whose attacks were more fair on the other one? Okay, were Biden's attacks fair? 69% of these debate watchers say yes. Biden's attacks were fair, 28% say no. The flip side of that, were Donald Trump's attacks fair? Only 32%, a third of debate watchers said they were. 2/3 of debate watchers, 67%, say no, Donald Trump's attacks tonight in the debate were not fair. Wolf.
Very, very interesting indeed. Let's go back to Jake, Dan, and Abby. You know, Jake.
You want hands down?
He stood up.
I don't know, there's other fucking wankers you're talking about.
At all, and he clearly didn't need a teleprompter.
That's right, Wolf. And I guess it's no surprise, Abby, that with a slightly more Democratic-leaning audience, as this poll had, not to mention just that utter embarrassment of a debate, that people would overwhelmingly say Biden won the debate and Donald Trump lost. But I have to say, I don't think it's so much that Joe Biden won the debate. I don't think he had any outstanding moments. I don't think he commanded the stage. I think it's more just that Donald Trump lost it.
Yeah.
And
Oh, get fucking real, idiot!
And repeatedly, and frankly, offensively.
Yeah, you could see it in the focus group.
You're talking
When
shit.
You looked at the show of hands. Nobody raised their hands. Most of them didn't raise their hands for either one of these candidates. And I think that that's a pretty accurate reflection of where we are. I think tonight was a lot of missed opportunities for the president to clear up some real issues that he had, some vulnerabilities, especially on the coronavirus.
He gave everyone a chance to see what sort of a fucking arsehole he is.
To really set the American public
Finally.
straight about whether he has this pandemic under control. And, don't take it from me. I mean, tonight, the president's campaign says that he turned in the greatest debate performance in presidential history. And then there's Chris Christie, the New Jersey governor who spent the weekend prepping the president for this debate. He said tonight on another network, I think on the Trump side, it was too hot. So even the people who are there for the president, they didn't think that he did what he did.
Except for the people paid to praise him with these
Whose jobs depend on it.
preposterous, sycophantic praise.
Right. I mean, it was could have been written by Donald Trump. I think the fact that
Probably was.
probably the fact that the expectations in this instant poll versus the reality of what the people who are part of this saw is really telling. So before the debate, 56% of the people said that they thought that Joe Biden would win, but afterwards 60%. And then more importantly, making your point, Jake, 43% said that they thought Trump would win, but afterwards 28%. It was Donald Trump's debate to lose, and he lost it.
Yeah, because he wasn't just debating Joe Biden, he was debating Chris Wallace, he was debating democracy, he was debating decency, he was debating truth and facts. I mean, he was opposed to everything. It was Donald Trump debating the concept of whether or not there should be debates.
I have to tell you, I'm curious to see what you've heard. I've gotten some texts from Republicans saying, this is the kind of thing that we've heard from people who have come out of the administration and turned on the president, that this is how he performs in private, and we've seen now a lot of that in public.
I heard from a Republican congressman, Abby, who was embarrassed that the president asked the Proud Boys, the far-right neo-fascists, to stand by.
Well, that was really shameful, as we all have been saying. But, I mean, I don't think we should discount that, some 20-something% of people in this poll say they did like it. Many of those people are probably Republicans and the president's core supporters.
Absolutely. Still ahead, more takeaways from tonight's debate from CNN's Instant Poll and our focus group of undecided voters. Have they made up their minds after tonight? Stay with us.
Yeah, Biden won.
Yeah, easy.
Quest's World of Wonder.
I don't know what they're fucking talking about. Anyway, I'll give them something to talk about.
Yeah.
Oh, there's that receipt, Chris.
Oh, yeah.
I had to give it to you yesterday. I'll check it out. No problem.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. I got the right price for the suit.
Yeah. no $4.
Yeah, fuck 'em. Yeah, you gotta watch them. Oh, shit.
Yeah.